a glowing yellow ball, hovering above the air. It was like the sun. A hero is a being whose strength is many times greater than a human's. After a while, a manly hand approached the glowing object. On the battlefield was a muscular man with a scar on his skull. An aura of anger and hatred emanated from him. He stood opposite his opponent, who was dressed entirely in a black suit and also had a helmet on his head. The asphalt shattered on the sides into small and rather large particles. Suddenly, the villain, with anger in his red eyes, swung a heavy fist at his opponent. The opponent decided to use his power. He lit a fire in one of his hands. Heroes always confront villains. At this moment, a young man in a black suit swung and hit the muscular villain with his fire. All around was seeded with flames. After this blow, the entire audience that was watching their fight was pleasantly surprised, all shouting that the stranger in the black suit was the best. The opponent sweated in his suit and opened the curtain of his helmet. Heroes are always respected and envied. This impressive fight between the two opponents was videotaped. The guys were watching this rank. The girl said in surprise that that stranger took down the bulky man with one punch. The young man exclaimed that it was all because he was a hero. While the boy was watching the fight, he noticed an interesting coincidence. He looked at his red-haired comrade, who had fallen asleep with a shot glass in his hands. It seemed to him that this stranger in a black suit looked a lot like his friend named Kim Sona. The red-haired guy drunkenly interjected his comrade, holding his stomach. Kim said he could barely stand on his feet and was very nauseous. He didn't understand how he ended up in this place. The guys laughed. One of the comrades said he understood Sona perfectly. A message came on the red-haired guy's phone, saying that Kim should come out now. This news immediately caught the young man's attention. Kim looked at his phone. He got up from the table and, pulling himself up, said he needed to go to the restroom right away. The guys talking to each other said it was okay and they would wait. Kim Sonu looked at his phone he was holding in his hands. He walked to the restroom while the other customers were moving on to the second round of the fight. The young man's phone was showing the news. The program was telling him that a famous hero had suddenly disappeared after saving people's lives. The red-haired boy reached the restroom. He went in and closed the door behind him. For his own safety, Kim decided to lock the doors to the restroom with a padlock. Kim took out his cell phone and with a serious face said that he had arrived at the location. After these words, a very loud bang was heard near the restroom window. From the window opening jumped out the same stranger in a black suit who was in the first rank of the battle. The red-haired guy asked him about how he could get in here with his helmet on. Kim added that if they got caught, they would get in a lot of trouble. The stranger, taking off his mask, told Sonu not to worry about it so much. In front of Kim stood a young man who looked exactly like him. The doppelganger said with a smirk on his face that he was much more attractive under the helmet, taking off his black suit. The man said about how there was nothing more exciting than a mysterious hero who suddenly shows his true face. He also asked him about what Sonu even knew. The doppelganger turned around and with a serious face said that first of all, JooWon should assume his true identity as soon as possible. He also added that it's pretty creepy for the real Kim Sung to see a guy with his face. Joo confusedly agreed with the young man's words. The guy took a deep breath and exhaled. He focused on his body. JooWon's body began to transform. After a while, a blue, shining symbol appeared near the young man's feet. Kim watched it all from the side, a look of surprise in the guy's gaze. The red-haired guy said that it looked disgusting, and he added that Kim didn't understand how Joo could just copy someone's appearance. The magic began to disappear and the appearance of the double changed dramatically. Kim Sunwoo held out his big and manly hand. He said that he was a famous hero anyway. Then he grabbed his double's cheeks hard and sharply. The real Kim. A suspicious smirk appeared on his face, holding his cheeks. He asked Joo if he was hitting on girls. He also added that the waitresses on today's shift were very attractive. The doppelganger laughed at the question. Joo smilingly replied that he hadn't. He also added that he was reincarnating as Sianu. Not for the first time. The red-haired guy leaning on one's shoulder agreed with his words. Kim Sonu told the young man to make sure that he completely made up that costume properly. The red-haired guy smilingly said about how they had done a pretty good job with it. The doppelganger wondered very much if Sonu was actually a hero or just successfully pretending to be one. Joo was gathering all of his clothes into his bag. The young man adjusted his black cap. He realized he had a superpower. One walked out of the restroom with his bag in hand. The guy raised his blue eyes and said that even if he had such a gift, it doesn't mean that everyone can be a hero. JooWon revealed that he works as a doppelganger for heroes in order to replace them in real life. The guy went further and added that he works as a regular person. About 20 years ago, the first people with superpowers started appearing on Earth. For this reason, the whole world was plunged into chaos. The villain, with a smile on his face, lifted a car with one hand. Next to this guy stood other people with abilities. The cops hid behind their cars. The negative hero kept holding the vehicle up. He told the officers to start shooting at him. As soon as the employees decided to attack him, the bullets started bouncing off the young man. The villain grinned and laughed. This outcome was not at all expected by the police officers. They were shocked to see bullets bouncing off the man. Everything around them shook violently and shattered into pieces. The villain, with madness in his eyes, threw himself at the young man, clutching the heavy automobile in his hands. Raising his head upward, the offender, with terror in his voice, exclaimed, "Mommy." After this, there was a deafening thump and eerie screams from the people. In order to completely restore order in society, the government saw a new law. People with superpowers who don't follow the law and pursue personal gain automatically become villains. Punishers who stop them become heroes. The villains decided to make a lair for themselves. They settled in a tall multi-story building. Nemesis was the leader of the association of all the negative characters. The man said that the law about heroes and villains is complete nonsense. The girl sitting next to him laughed and added that it is just ridiculous. The leader said he didn't believe Mr. Policemen would come to their lair and stop them. All the guys in the group shouted loudly, "Beggars." The young man took a glass and asked with a smile about who even believed in heroes to date. Completely unaware of this, some unknown male had burst into the villain's locale. The stranger had no visible pupils, and his mask was worn over his eyes. The red cloak of a young man developed in the wind. He had a rather pumped-up physique. The villains asked about who the man was. The boys laughed at his appearance and said that the young man's image was very funny. The stranger uttered the name of the leader, who at that moment united absolutely all the villains into one. He pointed a finger at the founder of the squad and said in a serious voice that according to the law of heroes and villains under Article 1, Nemesis would be punished. The squad did not react to these words in any way. They just laughed with the hero. Nemesis turned into a horrible demon. He had massive horns and a very negative aura emanating from him. The leader said he had no idea for what the stranger thought he was. After a complete transformation, the man turned purple and his eyes were bright red. Nemesis asked the guy how he dared to say such nonsense to his face. The leader of the group aggressively ran at the young man. He shouted that the stranger should know his place. This hero did not even twitch from Nemesis' actions. The unknown man decided to use his power. In his fist formed a kind of lightning. With the same force, the young man hit the leader of the group in the stomach, causing him to curl up from the blow. From the strong blow, the den of villains began to disintegrate into small parts. A huge hole was created in the apartment building, and the group's accomplices and Nemesis himself were scattered to the sides. Nemesis asked excitedly about who the stranger was. Dust was coming from the leader and there was smoke all around. The hero stood in front of the villain and said with a serious face that he was Justice. Lightning appeared in his eyes. This was the hero. After that incident of Justice, he became the most popular positive character. The world of heroes opened up for him, but with his ability to copy absolutely any appearance, he can't fight villains face to face. The boy looked at his hand, which was like a tree emitting electricity. The young man walked into his house. There were things scattered all over his room. Taking off his shoes, Ju said he was sending everything to hell. The guy also added the fact that there are guys who are heroes living life to the fullest. The guy pulled out his phone and looked at the calendar. It was May 11th and at the bottom was a note for April 11th on the lunar calendar that he needed to fill in for Kim Sung. Ju looked at his phone and tilted his head sideways. He said at least he has the ability to use superpower even if it is illegal. The positive hero pulled out all his savings, carefully counting his money, which he set aside in a separate brown bag. Vaughn said, doing all this hero stuff, in the end, they still get money. He squeezed in his hands that paper bag of money. The man lay back on the couch. He relaxed. He said he would work like hell to make money and retire at 50. While the young man was relaxing, there was a noise in his room. As it turned out, there was a very loud knocking at JooWon's door. The boy asked in surprise as to who else could have been brought in at such a late hour. The knocking at the door didn't stop. Ju sleepily said he was on his way to open it. The young man opened the front door ajar and asked who was there. A real hero of justice appeared in front of him. The metal emblem on his chest glittered. The hero with a serious face and a lightning bolt beside him asked about whether the guy was Lee JooWon, but the black-haired guy was shocked to see a real hero standing in front of him. Justice clenched his fists and said that the guy was acting illegally by impersonating heroes in real life. He asked if it was really true. JooWon couldn't understand how the man could know about it. In his thoughts, Ju was thinking that the man came to arrest him. He was planning to make an escape, but he realized that his opponent was Justice. As suddenly, Justice said that he came to the young man's house in order to hire him as a double from real life. From such words, Joo was shocked. He pointed his finger and asked in surprise about why the hero wanted to hire him. Justice asked for if Joo was aware that he should not ask him unnecessary questions. The guy agreed with the words, but the hero scared the hell out of him, opening a huge suitcase of documents. The hero said he had brought everything he might need. Joo silently started looking at all the documents. He reviewed all the forms. Joo looked at Justice suspiciously and said his picture wasn't here. Justice put his hand over his face and thought for a moment. The man took off his mask and asked Joo about whether this would work. The guy looked at him and said it was fine. Joo asked Justice for when he should get to work. The hero said tomorrow. He handed the guy a black business card with an emblem on it and told Joo to come to this address. The hero rushed towards the exit. The guy shouted for the man to stop, but as soon as Joo looked away, the neighborhood was already empty. Joo pulled out the black business card the hero had given him and looked at it thoughtfully. The next day, the guy came to the place that was indicated on the card. It was a huge and tall building. He looked up and said admiringly that the room was very huge. Joo looked again at the address that was listed on the business card and asked himself about whether he had definitely come to the right place. The boy rode in the elevator and fought for the positive hero. The young man said that Justice was one of those who protected people on the front lines, and Joo was his exact opposite. He didn't understand why the hero found him. Either way, Joo isn't going to pass up a client like Justice. Stepping out of the elevator, the guy thought that if he tried hard enough, he could stretch this case out a lot longer. After apologizing, Joo walked in. He saw 3 chairs, with a man sitting in one of them. Joo happily started pulling out his papers. The guy said they could get right down to business. For starters, the wannabe pulled out a non-disclosure agreement. The guy threw a glance in the hero's direction. He asked him for the man to fill out the document. When Joo fully looked at Justice, he saw that the man was covered in blood, and his fingertips were already blue. What Joo saw made him uncomfortable and he let out a surprised cry and stepped back. Joo got very worried, and in his eyes was visible fright. The guy thought about the fact that the hero was dead. Sweat was rolling down the young man's face, and Joo was very scared by the whole situation. He couldn't believe that hero number 1 had been killed. He was very curious about who dared to do it. The guy decided that he needed to calm down. After all, Justice might still be alive. Joo reached out his hand to the young man. He asked about how the hero was feeling. Joo's fingers made contact with Justice's clothes and emitted electricity. Unexpectedly, after the contact, everything around him started to display sparks. Joo didn't expect this at all. After that, he started to be thrown backwards. There was more and more electricity. The guy was scared and asked what the hell was going on. The discharge intensified more and more. Everything around him just glowed blue. Joo squinted and covered his face with his elbows. He was thrown to the floor and Justice lay lifelessly on the surface. Joo looked at his hand, which was filled with electricity. He said those rays just now. As suddenly, the 2 fingers that Joo touched the hero with became many times bigger and more massive. The guy took his hand and shouted in confusion. An extremely intense consternation appeared on Joo's face. He couldn't understand what was happening in this room. Justice began to bleed more and more of his blood. The guy said it was definitely the radiation from his ability. He left the hero's body as it was and excitedly said that he needed to get out of this office as soon as possible. Joo, with great speed, started running down the stairs. He didn't know what exactly happened here, but finding the guy here was the best way to get seriously in trouble. The guy was running so fast that all the passers-by were looking at him. Joo decided that he needed to report everything to the Heroes Association as soon as possible. From the fast pace, the young man caught his hand on the coffee glass of one of the passers-by, so that it opened. Joo hit his hand and apologized to the passerby. Then the stranger asked the guy about whether he was a copycat. At those words, the guy got another fright and his pupils shrank. Kim Sonu was standing in front of him, his shirt stained with coffee that Joo had carelessly spilled on him, and the red-haired guy asked him what his buddy was doing here. Joo looked at him and thought that even though Kim was being rather defiant, he was still a hero of the highest order. The wannabe had a brilliant idea in his head. Kim asked the guy about why Joo was squeezing his hand so strangely. The young man wanted to give a reason. Joo excitedly looked at his hand, which he touched to the hero, but not expecting it at all. The guy's hand became normal. Joo didn't understand how it could go back to normal. The red-haired guy aggressively told Joo to stop. He asked if the copycat knew how much his white shirt cost. Kim added that even though the guy had worked as a double his whole life, His speech was interrupted by some very strange noises. The red-haired guy asked for what was going on here. Joo fearfully decided to look back. Kim continued his speech. He said he was going to make the copycat pay for his dry cleaning anyway, but Joo wasn't listening to him. He was looking around excitedly. Just as suddenly, some kind of pink bullet-shaped force whirled around very quickly. It hit the red-haired guy in his left side that he was shocked by such a powerful force. Kim bent over in pain and through gritted teeth asked what it was. An unknown character with a green cloak with long tentacles peeking out of it asked Kim what happened. He also added that the red-haired hero was all over the news. The stranger with pink eyes and a wide smile said that actually, Kim just turned out to be a pathetic brat. Joo was frightened. He realized that the real villain was standing in front of them. Through his teeth, the wannabe said that this negative character was attacking with his tentacles. He was counting on the fact that it wasn't this villain who killed Justice. At this moment, Kim was very angry. He called the villain a fucker and there were flames near his mouth. The red-haired guy decided to use his power. A bright and big fire appeared in his hand. After a while, Kim's entire silhouette was on fire. He said he would turn the villain into a crispy and fried octopus. Kim swooped down on the negative hero with great speed, and his jacket was torn to pieces. The villain didn't even move from his seat. The villain swung away from the young man's blow, jumping upwards. The man in the green cloak said that the guy was being very rude to him, and he had a caustic smile on his face. The negative character with a spark in his eyes launched his tentacles at the red-haired guy. Kim looked up with anger. He saw the attack getting faster and faster closer to him. The red-haired guy crossed his arms to use his power harder. He swung his hands back, fire spreading across the room. The top-ranked hero pounced on the villain with words that the villain was a stupid and fucked up octopus. He added that the negative hero's entire body was a clear proof of that. From these words, the villain got a wide and suspicious smile. The negative hero grabbed the redhead's body with his tentacles, and those tentacles encircled Kim from the neck to the torso. One of the tentacles grabbed the guy's neck and started strangling him. Kim was furious and didn't understand how this could happen. The villain smirked evilly. He said that Kim had thought in vain that he only had 4 tentacles, only because the red-haired guy hadn't seen the others. His pink eye glittered and the smile never fell off his face. The man added that it was too childish. At this scary sight, all the passers-by were watching. They were creeped out. Joo was also watching the whole situation from the side. He couldn't believe that Kim Sung was caught so quickly and easily. After all, he was in the highest rank. The red-haired guy's arm sagged right in the villain's embrace and gave no signs of life. The negative hero hesitated, but still held the guy up. The villain threw Kim back down on the floor and told everyone the fact that their little hero was already dead. A suspicious smile appeared on his face again and he said, "Now." All the people around were horrified and creeped out. The man in the green cloak took one of the people present with his tentacles, and after that, threw him to the floor. The second passerby, the evil character with all his might hit in the back. That from such pain, the man screamed. The negative character stuck out his tongue and told them to have some fun. At that moment, Joo managed to hide under the table. The villain laughed loudly. The wannabe thought about the fact that another hero should appear anyway. A poster caught his eye. On this ad was drawn a man, namely Justice. Also, it was written that this positive character is the hero of the month. Not far from Joo sat 2 people. He heard their conversation. The girl said that everything will be fine because this place is under the protection of Justice and he will arrive soon. The frightened guy next to him added that Justice will quickly deal with everyone. Then the doppelganger remembered what he had seen this morning, namely the dead hero of the month. In his thoughts he said that it couldn't be so. The passers-by covered their ears and heads. They were all shaking with intense fright. Kim couldn't believe that all these people were destined to die like this, namely, waiting for the hero who wouldn't come. But Kim realized that there was nothing he could do about it, since his adversary was the villain. Then the young man was very upset that he couldn't even fight evil, because he wasn't even a hero. Unexpectedly, something rushed into the boy's blue eyes and caught his attention. In the distance, the wannabe saw a little girl who was crying hard. This crying was heard by the negative character himself. He turned towards the child with a smile. The little girl in a red sundress was wiping tears from her face with her hands. The wannabe shouted for the girl to run away as quickly as possible, rather than sit in that spot. Through a two-faced smile, the villain called the child a rat. He released his tentacles on her and shouted about where the girl was going to run to. The little girl sat in the same spot. She wiped her tears from her face as the attack from the villain approached her. The doppelganger was shocked. In his thoughts, flashed the same little girl who was begging the guy for help. After that, Kim decided to act. He angrily ran in the direction where the child was sitting. The little girl covered her eyes with her elbow, and Kim exclaimed for the villain not to do that. The kid reached out to the tentacle. In thought, the wannabe called himself an idiot. Joo couldn't understand what he was thinking when he decided to tear into this place. He thought he wouldn't be able to catch it anyway. His blue eyes began to fill with electricity. At the hand of Joo's arm, a discharge also appeared. The guy tried to prevent the attack, as suddenly, the doppelganger still managed to grab the villain's bend, but his hand became completely different. A light showed on the ceiling. After this action, the negative hero opened his mouth and was shocked so that he couldn't say a single word. Joo turned into a hero, Justice. With his back, the man covered the little girl. But in fact, Joo remained the same, but in the guise of a positive rescuer. He did not understand what had happened. His muscles tensed up very much. Justice, holding the villain in his hand, thought about the power that was flowing in his hands. Very different from what he had more. He squeezed the curve of the negative character as hard as he could. Justice swung his hand away and ripped off a piece of the villain's tentacle. The man in the cloak was writhing in great pain. After this incident, the hero said that he did not know what exactly was going on in the room. Justice said that according to the law of heroes and villains, Article 1, the villain would be punished. Justice stood in front of his opponent. The hero's whole body was overflowing with tremendous power so that it was hard for him to deal with it. The guy was just blazing with blue fire mixed with discharge. Joo realized that this was the first time he was going up against a villain. He didn't know if he could do it at all. The negative character viciously told the hero not to worry, since the villain can regenerate his tentacles for as long as he wants. He started to regenerate his bend. The man in the green coat unraveled all his tentacles and said that once he managed to catch the young man, he would be finished with him immediately. Just like the previous fellow hero, an attack was approaching from the evil side, but the savior didn't even move. Justice raised one eyebrow and interjected. He deftly dodged the attack. The hero, wondering to himself if the villain had been this slow before. The positive character still also didn't understand why evil with such speed. Then, Justice quickly and carefully began to move between the tentacles. He could easily dodge this attack. The hero was flush with his opponents. The villain did not understand how the guy managed to do it. Without thinking long, the savior swung his huge fist. He hit the villain in such a way that the man's face flattened very badly. Justice did not say a word. His opponent flew back from such a blow. The hero reached his hand down to the villain's curves and grabbed him. The positive hero took a swing to throw the villain. The guy toppled over himself. The long twist of evil. He abruptly, and with great force, hurled the man in the green jacket against the wall. The villain's teeth splintered and the man began to grunt. Joo was shocked that he had only pushed his opponent slightly and he had already flown the entire distance to the wall. Evil sat unmoving, tilting his head down. The hero thought what he could do was marvelous. The guy decided that if he held back his powers, something really bad could happen. His hand radiated energy. The enemy began to lurch again. Unexpectedly, the villain screamed and lunged towards the hero. Justice said that now even he was sweet to fight the villain. He tensed his fist to use it to attack at his opponent. His fist began to give off much less power than it had before. After a couple seconds, his fist stopped blowing from the discharge. Joo didn't understand what was wrong. He asked himself what was wrong with him. The doppelganger had stopped feeling his power. Joo remembered the moment when he touched the real hero and his fingers became strong for a while. He said that now it was the same as before. The savior could not control his transformation. Positively, the hero exclaimed with fright that this was very bad. If the powers stopped working altogether. At that moment, an evil enemy with tentacles from above was coming at the hero at a fast speed. Just as suddenly, some yellow force hit the negative character. The villain began to be thrown aside. He screamed loudly from this pain. At that moment, an unknown force threw the man in the green cloak straight into the wall so that pieces shattered. But it wasn't Joo at all. The guy didn't realize what had just happened. The villain was lying in smoke and dust. A stranger spoke of coming just in time. Justice looked at the man. It was a girl with pink hair, green glasses, and an athletic build. The madam approached the hero and said that she didn't expect any other outcome from Mr. Justice. She asked the savior about whether he knew the girl was coming here. Joo was in an awkward position. The girl with sparks in her eyes said that Justice had excellent hearing, for he diverted the villain's attention to himself in order for the lady to attack in peace. She asked him if that was really the case. The hero said it was so. The lady replied that she thought so. Joo did not understand who the girl was. It seemed to him that she was also a hero. Anyway, the wannabe was calm, for he remained alive. Then the maiden said that the savior was indeed very fast. She asked the hero about how he was able to get here faster than them if they were originally next to each other. Their dialogue was interrupted by the evil one. He was swearing loudly. The girl put on her helmet and bright, sunny rays appeared in her eyes. With her extremely bright power, she burned through the negative character. The villain twisted from the attack. My lady asked Mr. Justice how that worthless wretch dares to think for being able to go against a hero. Looking at him, she added that it was absurd. While the girl was coping with the villain, the young man discreetly left. The lady inquired about where the hero had gone. The heroine was upset. She wanted to get Justice's autograph. The girl in the black cape said about her partner coming to her senses already. She also asked the accomplice if the lady could see any injured people around. The pink-haired girl approached one of the men and asked him if he was okay. The partner couldn't believe that Justice was actually alive. With her side vision, she saw Ju running. The young man, trying to get away from this creepy place as fast as he could. The girl in the black mask thought for a moment. It was getting dark. Ju had already returned to his home. He was turning over in the machine all those documents that night, brought to him by the real hero of justice. Ju said there were too many sheets, so his fingers were all numb. The wannabe took a garbage bag and put everything in there. The guy went down his stairs, with the bag in his hands. After that, the young man calmly tossed that bag into the container before the rest of the trash. He turned around and was about to go home. The double holding his head said he didn't know what he should do. Ju thought about the fact that if Justice was the #1 ranked hero, then that meant that the villain who killed him was even stronger. The wannabe grabbed his hair and said that at that moment, he was very stunned and so he couldn't even think of just reincarnating and running away. He added that if he did, no one would even notice him. From behind the young man's back, a woman's voice was heard. The guy turned towards the trash can to see who it was, but he didn't see anyone there. The female voice reappeared. She said about the one who destroyed the evidence with the shredder, and also added that Ju was quite squeamish. The wannabe couldn't understand where the sound was coming from. The girl replied that the voice was coming from right below him. He lowered his gaze down. Some sort of substance with purple eyes began to emerge from the asphalt. Ju screamed and fell to the ground, not far from the stranger who continued to emerge from the top ball of earth. It was the partner, the same girl with pink hair who had helped the guy deal with the villain in the morning. She said the guy was very noisy. Down above the girl, there were long black arms. Those hands headed towards the trash can. They grabbed the bag of trash that Ju had thrown in there. With their black, sharp fingers, the black hands tore open that bag. Pieces of documents sprinkled from it. The girls started pulling to each other. All the undercut pieces of documents. Ju was very much shocked. He couldn't believe it. All the shredded papers that the hero of the month brought to the guy returned to their original form. Ju couldn't believe that the girl managed to recover all the original documents. The masked stranger said that everything was clear to her now. Her eye began to glow a bright pink color. She added what the young man saw Justice's dead body. The girl apologized and said that the fact that the man knew about the case put her in a very difficult position. She pointed her tentacles at the boy. Ju didn't realize what was the matter. There was an attack from the masked stranger. The wannabe was thrown backwards. He thought of that girl, really wishing him dead. The doppelganger angrily said that then he had no choice at all. He began to reincarnate into a hero. The guy shouted that if it was the girl who killed Justice, he wouldn't even hold back. Ju reincarnated into a positive character again. He thought about making sure the lady didn't grab him with her tentacles. The character frowned his eyebrows and said that the stranger's attack strategy was very similar to the previous one. He thought about dodging the wriggles, getting closer to his opponent and attacking him. Just as suddenly, the guy's vision changed drastically. His leg began to lose strength again. Ju realized that it was again a sign of the same transformation. He was suddenly transforming. The girl's attack flew at him. The guy's strength was completely gone, and black arrows stuck not far from him. The stranger with purple hair sighed. She said that in the end, the guy was just a worthless wannabe. The girl kept wondering who was acting as Justice so fearlessly. The lady added that it was very miserable. She directed her force at him again. At this moment, the young man was extremely angry. He with all his might stuck his hand into the asphalt. Ju easily pulled out a huge rock from under the asphalt. The guy seemed extremely angry. The arrow from the stranger was getting closer and closer. Then the wannabe covered himself with the stone so the attack wouldn't touch him. He angrily flung back the aimed arrow with a huge cobblestone. At that moment, the masked girl approached the young man. She was already preparing another strike. Ju considered the fact that the stranger was very fast. Another black arrow was sent in his direction, but the stone was already starting to crack. When the cobblestone was completely shattered, the positive character prepared his fist to strike. Joo approached the girl and hit her in the face with all his might. The stranger did not expect such a turn at all. From a very strong blow from the hero, the girl's mask was torn. She began to be thrown back. As suddenly, the young man for a moment confused. He realized that now he had to accelerate as quickly as possible. The guy swung his fist again, but suddenly, he stopped. Joo couldn't understand why his body wasn't paralyzed. The girl said that the young man wasn't bad, but that's where it would end. The stranger spoke up for the guy being in her power. The doppelganger began to be enveloped in black lines, and his legs went up a little at a time. From head to toe, the young man was enveloped in an embrace of black arrows. One of the twists began to choke his neck. Joo said of not being able to breathe air. He began to gasp for air, while the girl controlled her attack. Just as suddenly, the stranger hesitated. The guy's opponent snapped his fingers. After that, Joo fell to the ground. The wannabe couldn't understand what happened and why the girl decided to let him go. The lady asked him for if the guy was going to continue doing what he was doing before. Joo asked her what exactly she meant. She grabbed his cheeks and told him that instead of a cheesy hero wannabe in their normal life, why shouldn't Joo be Justice's replacement? The young man was shocked by this news. The girl still continued to hold the man's cheeks as well. She said that justice was the embodiment of everything that heroes fight for. The stranger added that if news of the murder of a positive character leaked to the media, it would create widespread panic. Releasing her hand from the guy's cheek, she said that they needed someone to buy her some time while she thought about how to handle the situation. Joo didn't understand and asked again. The wannabe pointed his finger at her and talked about how a couple minutes ago, the villainess tried to kill him. He added that that's all she said was bullshit. Joo also asked her about who she really was. She calmly introduced herself. Her name was Chrome. The girl was one of the justice team. Joo disdainfully asked her if she was a hero. Chrome replied that the guy could check it since she was mentioned in those files that justice gave him. He rushed to those documents to verify the information that the girl said. The guy noticed Chrome's picture and realized that it was all true. The girl said that she just wanted to silence the guy, so she scared him a little. She added the fact that it was never in her plans to kill the copycat. Chrome said that if Joo agreed to be his replacement, Chrome said that the compensation for Joo's inconvenience would be a monthly payment of 100 million in cash. The doppelganger was shocked at these words, as his current earnings are not comparable to the amount the heroine said. Joo frowned his eyebrows and said that he didn't understand how he could become his replacement. He also asked Chrome for what would happen if the copycat was suddenly caught. The girl held out her palm and told the doppelganger not to worry about such a thing. She added that she would help him avoid such a thing. Tilting his head sideways, the wannabe wanted to say what he was thinking, but Chrome interrupted him and said that she wasn't going to force the guy. She said that if, all of a sudden, there was a single rumor that Justice was dead, then all the villains who had been hiding somewhere in the shadows until then would immediately go into full force, simply because the strongest of the heroes was no longer alive. Chrome went on to say that after this news, the villains will start a war against the heroes, and then, countless innocent people will be dragged in, giving their lives. She asked the guy about what he thought was the right choice he should make. The wannabe understood that Chrome was right. Joo knew that the very existence of justice provided law and order, but the boy wasn't sure he could do what the hero did. The doppelganger remembered the little girl and realized that he could no longer bear the deaths of innocents again. Joo looked at his hand and fell silent. Chrome said then, probably demanding too much from the young man. The girl turned around and waved her hand away, saying that was enough. She added something that she originally shouldn't have expected anything from the guy. Chrome says to just not tell Joo to tell everyone about the hero's death. Just as suddenly, the copycat ordered the girl to stop. He excitedly says that he was just a little busy counting. Joo said that considering the risks of the non-disclosure agreement and the guards assigned, he felt that 100 million wouldn't be enough. Guy pointed two fingers and said that at least 200 million was needed. He asked his partner about whether she felt the same way. Chrome, with a smile on his face, said about the doppelganger not regretting his words. A week later, Joo was sitting at his laptop reading articles with stacks of papers next to him. He seemed very tired. The guy pulled himself up and spoke justice a few times. He said he could hear the name even now. Joo probably read too much into it. He looked at the papers and said it seemed to him that most of what he had read Joo had memorized. By the door, Chrome was already waiting for him. She told them to get going. The boys got into the white car and headed out. Chrome drove the car, and the young man again reviewed all the documents. Joo asked the girl if he could ask her a question. Chrome asked him what was wrong. He asked for not considering withholding the truth from the villains. Do they really need to hide that information from the heroes too? Joo added about how it was likely that at least the top should know about it. The partner replied that that's usually how things are supposed to work, and for that reason, it would never happen. The young man did not understand what my lady meant. The car stopped. Chrome said that the guy would realize it himself once he saw it. They got out of the car. The girl closed the car door behind her. Joo asked her what it was. He looked in the distance and saw a cargo storage and shipping center. The guy asked Chrome about why they were here. Joo continued to follow the girl. The partner turned around and said that the wannabe was right and it was a shipping center. Near the entrance to the building, there was a security camera. Chrome showed her ID to the camera and said it was a storage center, only if you looked at it from the outside. Tech showed a red dot. The doors to the huge building began to open and white light radiated from the room. Joo was shocked. It was actually the main headquarters of the heroes. It was called the Atrium. There was a huge, golden statue of a hero in the center of the building, and there were other positive characters all around. Chrome said that goods were constantly being delivered from the center to this building, so it was fairly easy to hide in. There were a lot of different characters here. There were mutants and heroes with wings. Joo said that the saviors in this room were extremely numerous. While the guy was looking around, his partner told him that they had already arrived. They walked up to a huge door. Chrome said that they were just looking around today, so she asked Joo to wait in that spot. She added about the guy not drawing unnecessary attention. Joo realized that this was the room where the heroes hold their meetings. The partner entered the place. It was the key figures of the 4 hero teams, with 4 heroes sitting on the left side. On the other side of the table sat 2 girls and 1 young man. The girl with blue hair shouted loudly about why it was their fault that the villains were activated, and her name was Haste. She was the second member of the Guardians team. The red-eyed man then replied that it was because the number of incidents in their neighborhood had skyrocketed. This hero was on the Superhumans team and they addressed him, Dryam. He added that in the rest of the neighborhoods, the number of incidents remained normal, and in some areas, such incidents had even decreased. Dryam said with a smirk on his face that most likely the Guardian team were just not doing their job well. Hurry pointed a finger at him and said something to the effect that it was because the man had taken all of their staff. A guy who had a blonde appearance said that it would be more obvious if they started investing in those who deliver results. He added that everything from the maintenance of the atrium to their paychecks comes from there. This young man was also a member of the Superhumans team and his name was Nivelle. One of the participants said that it was much weirder that everyone had equal opportunities. After saying that, the other characters asked him about how he could call himself a hero. This guy was the first in the Union team, and his name was Arcadia. Joo peered near the door behind them. He couldn't believe that this was actually a gathering of hero representatives. Frowning his eyebrows, the young man said it reminded him of something else. It seemed to him that the meeting was like a solid disaster. In the interview room, the Iron Man said that it was more important for them to find out where Justice was. It was the first member of the Condor team. The specific hero's name was Zeus. A little girl with pink hair and a teddy bear on the table said that it had been a week. The little girl was the second member of the Condor team and her name was Pandora. Nivelle then said with a smirk on his face that most likely the rumors were true and the hero of the month could already be dead. Hurry was very angry with the man. She hit the table and said that if Nivelle has a tongue, it does not give him the right to grind whatever he wants with it. The girl added that she would not let him down if the guy continued to talk bad about Justice. The hero started to show his powers. Nivelle said to let Haste test him. He added that the girl is nobody without Justice and she should realize that. Unexpectedly, a very angry girl who was wearing a mask shouted loudly, "Silence!" She was the second member of Team Union and her name was Banshee. Banshee grudgingly asked them about why they always act like little children. The heroine said that they couldn't ignore the fact that Justice hadn't been heard from for a week. Banshee added that it was time for them to start assuming the fact that the hero might be in danger. She asked Chrome about whether Justice had gotten in touch with her. Joo's partner replied that he hadn't, but the hero had told her that he would be away for a while. The little girl then said that was a complete lie. Chrome interjected the little girl. Pandora, clutching her teddy bear, told her that because Justice had not been around for a long time, she decided to look into his penthouse. When she reached the room, she was surprised. There was blood all over the floor of the hero's office. Chrome was not satisfied with the heroine's story. She said that Pandora had entered Justice's private property without authorization. Iron Man then seriously questioned Chrome about whether it was all true. All the positive characters looked at the girl waiting for her answer. She realized that it was all very bad, because if Pandora had seen the scene of the crime, it would not be possible to lie to her. Chrome confusedly thought about the fact that if it ended like this, the consequences would not be the best. Unexpectedly, Justice walked proudly into the interview room. He said that what Chrome said was the truth. Joo, in the guise of a hero, smiled at his partner, but the girl did not expect such a turn of events at all and was shocked. The hero walked to the table and apologized for being absent for a long time. Justice sat down with the other guys and said that now he would explain everything to them. Joo realized that if he hadn't done anything at that moment, they would have been exposed. And now that all the key characters were in front of the guy, he decided to fool them all. It was a negotiating table. The participants were arguing and bickering amongst each other. Joo peeped through the gap behind them. He didn't know the fact that the heroes would turn out to be people like these. The guy added that they were completely different from their personalities that the media was showing them. He exhaled and said that this way, at least they wouldn't have any problems. As suddenly, the young man heard what someone heroes said about it all being a lie. Joo got scared and went to the door again. The little girl said about how there was blood everywhere in the hero's office. Zeus asked Chrome about if what Pandora said was true. The girl was silent and couldn't utter a word. Joo became very nervous. From the plan, case took a completely different turn, which the guys certainly did not expect. All the heroes around began to discuss the topic among themselves. Copycat realized that there is no chance that absolutely all the participants up to this time believe Chrome. He decided to use the power and reincarnate into Justice. Dreyam asked Chrome one more time. At this point, Joo finished his transformation into a hero. He entered the office saying that the girl told everyone the truth. Arcadia took off his earpiece and said that the hero looked quite good. Chrome was greatly shocked at such an action on the part of her partner. She could not understand what this idiot decided to do. The girl was happy only that the annoying questions in her direction finally ended. The heroine realized that if Joo made a single mistake, their disguise would go down the drain. The doppelganger walked straight ahead. He looked around and marveled at how huge everything was around him. Joo asked himself about whether they always had this many heroes. Hero began to get nervous. Joo was starting to feel some kind of twisted addiction to deceiving everyone around him. He remembered the way he had carefully read the articles that night. It was about the hero of Justice Month. The boy analyzed his gait, the tone of voice he'd used to greet the heroes in the negotiating room today. Joo even memorized the familiar justice area. Everything was immaculate. Nivelle said in surprise that he didn't understand why the hero was so calm even though he was late. He added that he hoped that Justice would try to explain things to them. Nivelle asked him about where he had disappeared to and why the hero's penthouse was in such a state. Joo realized what all the characters already knew about the crime scene. The hero said that it was because there was an assassination attempt on him. The participants of Atrium were shocked. They could not believe it. Everyone around began to discuss the case among themselves. Hurry did not expect such an answer from the young man at all. She loudly interrogated the man. The girl asked about how come the savior had hidden it for so long. She added that the hero didn't even tell her anything. Justice replied that he had to weigh his every move. He added that considering what had happened, the hero along with Chrome should have investigated everything in secret. Justice added that even now he couldn't reveal all the details. He said that the participants would be the first to know the results. Joo realized that everyone was focused on the topic and decided that now was the time. He turned to the little girl. With disdain in his eyes, the hero asked Pandora about who gave her the right to enter his penthouse. The little girl squeezed her teddy bear and said she was just really worried. He cocked his head to the side. Justice said that because he had to tell the team about the assassination attempt, the investigation would become even more difficult, for the reason that the customers would be even more careful from now on. The little girl tucked into the toy and tearfully apologized to the man. She said she had made a mistake. The hero replied that Pandora's careless reasoning disappointed him. Joo was a little annoyed as he felt like telling off a child. He decided he had said enough to close the subject. Afterward, Dreyam said that he found it hard to believe that there was an assassination attempt on the hero. The man added that it happened in the center of the city and therefore, a lot of people must be aware of the incident. Dreyam replied with a smirk on his face that first, they need to make sure that it was indeed an attempt to kill the hero. He added that it could easily be some kind of justice plan. The positive character became nervous, but replied that it wasn't at all. Pandora furrowed her eyebrows and said that the hero of the month wouldn't lie about something like that. She added that it was more Dreyam's style. The doppelganger thanked the girl. The little girl exclaimed about how JooWon was still too soft-hearted. The little girl's eyes began to glow. She said that the man is overly concerned about the civilians. For that reason, the villains keep getting away from JooWon. Pandora said that they should just kill them all and then they would save a lot more people if they did that. Zeus said the little girl was right. He asked how long the heroes had to run around to save a couple extra lives. Pandora agreed and added that there was nothing they could do about it, because the villains were following them and it looked like it was all planned. Joo didn't understand at all what was going on. The young man knew that they were all far from being friends, but all they were doing was trying to screw each other's heads off. Then Arcadia took off his headphones and asked them to stop. Haste was interested. The guy said that if Justice did decide to share the story with them, then he must have a reason. Arcadia added that they had another cool thing planned for today, so he suggested they just move on. Team Superhumans and Condor sat disgruntled. The Union members, namely Arcadia and Banshee, were disgruntled. Superhero was silent. They headed home in a black car. Joo sprawled out and talked about how he was very tired. His partner handed him a soda. Chrome sipped the soda drink and said that the young man had done a good job, but if she left out some of the flaws in their story. Joo replied with a smile on his face that it was all better than having the characters find out the whole truth. Joo asked Chrome to tell Chrome about why the guys were all so aggressively anti-justice. She replied that too much water had passed since they'd been trying to understand each other. The partner said that the ones who put safety first are the protectors from the Guardians. That's Haste and the hero himself. The extremists who care most about destroying the villains are the corpse collectors from the Condor group, namely Little Pandora and an Iron Man named Zeus, and those who believe they are the chosen heroes, the unrivaled guys from the supergroup. That was Nivelle and Dryam, and there remained the Bloodhounds who pursue lunar gain, united from the Union. That was the young man Arcadia and Lady Banshee. Joo asked about the fact that what ends up working out in the end is that the heroes are some kind of politicians. Copycat changed the subject. He asked Chrome for what type of heroes Haste belongs to. Chrome answered that the girl is the second in the Guardians team, as she is a gifted hero. Her partner added that she would bet that Haste is the most loyal to Justice. After that, the partner asked Joo for what he was asking about the girl for. The guy replied that when he was telling everyone that there had been an attempt on Justice's life, Rush tried to look surprised, but Joo noticed something different in her gaze. The doppelganger said that because he had the ability to copy someone's image, he was quite sensitive to such little things. Chrome hesitated for a moment. The young man said that was just his guess and they couldn't know that for sure. The wannabe was badly shaken. He exclaimed, "What?" The partner replied that they had probably arrived at the location. She said the guy could come out. Joo asked her in surprise about what else it was. She said the guy should be aware for the villains have been very weakened since Justice showed up, and even after that the heroes were trying to suppress them. Chrome continued the story. The girl said that the positive characters wanted to end them once and for all, namely through the Operation Annihilation. In the distance we could see arrivals in fire and falling from lasers multi-stories. It involves all groups of heroes under the command of Guardians. Joo was startled to say what that meant, as suddenly, Chrome said she agreed. Her partner turned and said that it was time for Justice to show up on the stage. There was a complete smoke break going on behind the girl, and she said that a positive character was obligated to appear on stage. Joo excitedly interjected. Chrome replied that after Justice showed up, the villains had very few bases left and today they had to mop up one of the remaining bases. She explained that the Guardians, Superhumans, Condor, and Union were to invade from 4 different directions, and Joo was to be the first to hit the centerpiece, the park. Chrome pulled him some sort of thing and told Jam to contact her when he got to the center. Joo asked to wait a bit. The wannabe shouted fearfully about how he would start fighting the baddies so abruptly. He also said that on top of everything else, he also needed to get there first. Joo said that was just impossible. The guy remembered his partner's promise to back up the guy. Chrome frowned and asked him if he wanted 200 million won. She repeated that Justice is the #1 hero, and if Joo can't show results even in such an early winnable battle, he'll blow his cover a little later anyway. Chrome exactly in mind that 200 million is not pocket change and so the young man must work accordingly reward. Joo was silent. He decided to take the technique after all. The guy had already reincarnated into a positive hero and put the technique on his ear. He realized that he was entitled to a bonus for this dangerous business. The doppelganger rushed forward and told Chrome to wait and see for himself. he flew down the mountain, confidently saying that he wouldn't miss a one of his 200 million. The place was just blazing with fire and smoke. Bright lasers were everywhere, and high-rises were falling one by one. Heroes fought against negative characters. There were moments that the atrium participants burned the villains through with their powers. When the doppelganger arrived at the place itself, he relayed over the machine that it was a real win-win battle. Chrome replied that it was all because the center had sent so many heroes here. The guy doesn't think about having anything to do here. At that moment, his name was shouted out by a girl with pink hair. She said with a smile on her face that she was glad to see the hero again. Justice said he saw her in the penthouse. The girl told him that she had heard rumors of an assassination attempt on the hero. She asked him about who even dared to do such a despicable act. Joo decided that the madam was a real fan of Justice. The lady shouted that the guy should find them and crush them. The man replied that it was so. With his side vision, the young man saw something. Behind Justice's back was a huge villain, who with his claws was approaching the man's head. The girl was frightened, as she did not notice how the monster approached. She wanted to use her power, but realized that it was too late. At that moment, Justice prepared his fist and swung hard. The hero hit the negative hero so hard that he twisted in the air several times. The villain landed directly with his head in the asphalt. Joo was afraid that the reincarnation might dissipate, so he used barely a quarter of his strength, and yet, it was more than enough for such small brats. The girl stood shocked at what she saw. Justice asked for the young lady's name. She excitedly replied that her name was Max Ray. The man burst forward saying that he was a bit busy at the moment, so he offered to chat another time. Max Ray didn't hear him and asked again. The hero of the month began to run extremely fast. Two villains appeared in his path. The dark-haired girl swung her hammer at Justice for the hero to die. Joo put a block in front of his face so that the pieces from the hammer shattered. The impact made the negative characters scatter to the sides and the hero ran on. Another evil exhaled on Justice with its flames. The young man was not confused and decided to use his foot. He pressed the asphalt so hard that the surface rose and protected the hero from the approaching fire. Afterward, the doppelganger decided to use his fist. The man with all his might hit the cement so that a huge boulder flew towards the villain. In the end, the negative character was nailed with a stone. After that, the rising hero fell silent. Rejected. Joo recalled a moment from his childhood when his little sister was in the hands of the villain. The young man couldn't do anything about it. The girl screaming her brother's name. The doppelganger looked at his hand and spoke of how he didn't know that he could copy the powers in dead heroes. He held up his fist and said that if he had that power before, Siona and the rest of Joo's family would probably be all together and happy. Chrome technically asked the guy if he was okay. Joo replied that he was. She said that if the hero continued to hover in the clouds, he would be left to swallow dust after others. Justice replied that he knew that. Joo tuned in and said that everything was right and he just needed to use his power. The superhero's foot lifted the asphalt beneath him. The doppelganger, with inexplicably fast speed, moved on his way to help other people without powers. The two villains hid behind cemented walls. The positive hero whizzed past the men. It was so fast that one of the villains didn't realize what had just happened. The guy with the short haircut said that Justice needed to be chased as fast as he could, and his partner told him to go for it. The girl in the hat said the guy was already where he was going. The copycat was still running fast towards his target as well. The park itself was visible in the distance. The man was surprised that he had reached it so quickly. Joo said that at this rate he would be the first. As suddenly, a spear flew towards the young man at a great speed. He immediately slowed down and the weapon stabbed into the pavement. Justice reacted quickly. Copycat walked over and took a closer look at the object. He realized what was being thrown at him was a sharp spear. A man came out from the front and said he was surprised that Justice had graced them with his presence. Over the machine, Chrome said she couldn't believe that the hero in front of her was Caesar. The wannabe excitedly asked her who it was. She replied that Caesar is the biggest celebrity among all the villains, and all this because the man kills heroes just for his own amusement. Chrome added that Caesar has already killed dozens of people from the atrium. The partner said that the villain is too strong an opponent for the wannabe. She added for Joo not to engage him. The wannabe heard the girl's words and decided he would just blow past the negative character. Caesar then angrily asked the guy about where he was going. The villain slammed his fist on the pavement. Joo didn't realize what had happened. He strongly and sharply grabbed Justice's neck with his hand, and afterward, threw the positive character aside. The character was surprised. He didn't realize what the villain had done in his direction. Wiping his hands, Caesar said with a smile on his face that Justice had already lost the battle if the guy's plan was to escape. He said said that it was all because the hero of the month was inside the Colosseum barrier for 2. Joo noticed the fact that his body became very heavy. He thought of the villain's ability increasing the strain on the bodies of others. The hero realized that he had no other choice. He still couldn't control his powers enough to create the perfect transformation. Caesar began to approach the positive hero with spear in hand. Justice decided to use his power. The two clashed. Joo thought that perhaps by this action he could defeat the villain. The opponent put up a block and said he wasn't inside the collision for 2. Justice did not understand what the villain meant. Caesar began to deftly swing his sharp implement. The negative character grazed the hero's shoulder with his spear. Joo said that the enemy was quite swift. Caesar got into a firm stance and began pointing his weapon at the hero. The villain shouted loudly and jabbed a sharp, golden spear at Justice. The hero could do nothing about the blow from the enemy. Joo's torso was hurt due to the bruise inflicted by Caesar's side. The negative character said that he couldn't believe that this was all Justice could do. He couldn't understand why those around him shook so much when they heard the hero's name. Caesar pulled his spear away sharply. The hero cried out in pain. The villain stretched his arms out to his sides and said that the man should put his best foot forward to fight him. Joo bent down. He thought he could easily win if he used all the powers of Justice. But by doing so, the guy could ruin his transformation. The hero began to use his power again. The mimic reflected that without proper control his powers would quickly run out. He questioned himself as to whether they would. Holding his spear in his hand, his opponent said taunting him by not fighting at full strength was too much, but all the better for it. Caesar began to use his full power. He said that once he killed Justice, the others would quickly stop resisting. The villain came at the hero saying he would impale him in one blow. The two men clashed. Justice held up the murder weapon to Caesar and said he was right. The copycat began to blaze with his power. The flames and discharge enveloped the young man from head to toe. The opponent couldn't understand what it was. Joo realized that superpowers are like a glass of water, and when you use them, they are like water, running out. But Justice's abilities are not a glass of water, but a boundless ocean. The hero prepared to strike. He was overflowing with power, although he used it only a drop at a time. Caesar did not expect this turn of events at all. The hero hit his opponent so hard that his knight's golden helmet was crumpled. Joo decided that first of all, Justice should not think about such trifles. Haste sat excitedly in one of the offices of the atrium. The girl with the yellow hair asked the heroine why she was so nervous. Haste asked her if Justice had signaled that he was in place. Madame with horns said that the hero was probably running late, or Caesar himself may have met him on his way. The Guardian team member said that there was no way she would believe that a villain could delay a man so much. The girl asked Haste about where she was going. She replied that she needed to go and see for herself. At this point, the men were having a fight. Justice hit his opponent with all his might so that he fell backwards. Caesar was very aggressive against the hero. His protective, golden helmet was crumpled on one side. The villain asked what it was. It appeared to the enemy that Justice had become a completely different person. Joo thought about the fact that up until this point, when he used his powers, he had tried to always out-control, which prevented the transformation from being completed. The wannabe asked himself what would happen if he let things go. Caesar braced himself before another attack. There was a clash between the two forces. Their battle was dangerous but also legendary. Justice punched his opponent in the stomach so that he grunted in great pain. Caesar crouched down and thought about the fact that the hero surpassed him in strength. The villain confidently refused to admit it. The enemy said viciously that if one barrier of the Colosseum didn't work, then he would finish it off with 2 barriers. Caesar kicked his leg to make another wall appear. The hero and the negative character started the battle between each other again. The villain noticed that the savior was getting slower. He decided it was exactly the right time to end things. The sharp weapon was closing in on the hero's rib cage. The wannabe took all his strength in his fist. Blue lightning spewing from the man. Joo pointed his fist right at the corner of the very sharp spear and held it to keep it from slamming into him. Caesar couldn't understand how the young man was doing this. The weapon shattered into small pieces. There was nothing left of the spear itself. The opponents said it couldn't be. Justice's fist was closing in on Caesar's face. He repeated that it just couldn't be. The hero hit his opponent so hard that his face crumpled. The villain could not believe that their forces could be so unequal. From this strike, Caesar twisted and flew to the floor, with bits of his spear hovering near him. The villain landed sharply with his head on the pavement. The enemy began to squirm and grunt in pain. The hero stood silent and just just watched him. Joo frowned his eyebrows and thought about this incident, because what he did was really dangerous. He didn't think he could dodge, so he just went for it. Somehow that's how it worked. The young man turned to the side. Justice saw what looked like a large building of houses collapsing behind him. It was all set up by the heroes from the Kandoro group, just like what Joo said. The guys didn't care about the people around them when fighting the villain. He added that it was very cruel. At that moment, a purple attack from the sky approached towards the hero. This strike was made on one of the apartment buildings. The apartments started falling down one after another. Joo shouted loudly. A huge chunk of the building began to fall right in the direction where Justice was. The hero fearfully asked the guys about whether they were overreacting. He decided that he needed to get out of their way as soon as possible. As Justice was about to go, he looked at his dying opponent. Joo thought that if he left Caesar here he would most likely just die. The hero decided that after all, the villain was completely defenseless. The wreck was getting closer and closer. The wannabe didn't know what he should do. He didn't understand why he was even thinking about it. Since this guy was trying to kill him, the hero said he didn't care if Caesar survived or not, because that's what the villain deserved. The building was a few millimeters away from the enemy. Joo said that in the end, it wasn't even any of his business. Justice still grabbed the villain and ran as fast as he could away from the serving multi-story building. Joo yelled about how he was completely insane. The hero said that when Caesar wakes up, he should rethink all his actions and live an honest life. He added that he hoped that the enemy understood him. At that moment, another building started to collapse on the guys. The wannabe didn't understand at all what he should do. Holding his opponent in his hands, Joo saw the multi-story building begin to fall on them at a rapid pace. Particles of foundation and cement flew around. The hero ducked down and covered his head with his hand, expecting the worst. But to his surprise, nothing happened at all. Justice was surprised. As it turned out, they had survived with Chrome. The young man was surprised at what his partner was doing here. She said she had promised something that would cover for him in a time of need. Chrome asked if she was serious. The girl closed her eyes and with a movement of her hands, began to gather all her power. She decided to use her magic to remove the wall that weighed right on top of them. Joo exhaled. He said he was scared for a second as he thought he was going to die. His partner stood beside the young man and said that the hero was out of his mind. Chrome said she didn't understand how Joo decided to help the villain. Justice took Caesar under his arm and said he couldn't leave his opponent there to die. He added that that's what he would have done. The real Justice. Just as suddenly, the villain heard their conversation and decided to spring into action. Caesar threw back the hero of the month's arm and aggressively ran towards the girl. He grabbed Chrome by the arms and brought a sharp object to her neck. This opponent seemed insane. The hero exclaimed the girl's name. The villain said he couldn't let him just be sacked like that. The golden shard was very close to her partner's carotid artery. Chrome asked Joo if he sees what he's getting when he tries to save the villain. She said Justice's position is not something a guy can hold or protect with such an irresponsible attitude. The partner said that even if she dies, the hero should do everything he can to make sure Caesar doesn't escape. Joo excitedly interjected her. The girl replied that Caesar was the leader of the local villains, and if he let the enemy escape then, it would be too dangerous for Justice in his current position. The villain brought the shard even closer to Chrome's throat. He asked them what the two of them were whispering about. Caesar yelled that he would really kill the girl. Joo wondered if the villain would kill Chrome. The hero said the enemy couldn't do it. Justice watched as the villain leader held his partner with a sharp object at her throat. Caesar called the hero an idiot. He added that the savior was finally starting to understand what was going on here. Without thinking long, the hero pounced on the villain with such speed that Chrome's hair flew up. The girl turned back to see what had happened. The hero grabbed Caesar's head and with all his speed, slammed him against the stone wall. This moment reminded Joo of that villain who killed his little sister a long time ago. He thought about how villains are just villains after all. The hero leaned against the negative character and with a serious face, said he had to clean up the mess he himself had made. Chrome exhaled and realized that the wannabe at least has a normal tongue. The partner added that they were already late, so Joo should immediately send a signal. Justice instantly let the villain go and fearfully said he would do anything. The man turned on the tech and said he was on the spot. On behalf of the Guardians, the hero said he was at the intended position. Joo said with a smile on his face that he's number one here. The guy added that it's very hard to give him that 200 million. Chrome thought about how Caesar is quite self-centered, but he is still very capable. Even if the copycat is possessed by the power of justice, he wouldn't be able to win against such an opponent with the level of ability he had last time. The partner pondered for the fact that the guy's abilities had grown in such a short period of time, at which point, the hero bent over the villain and thought about Caesar pretending to pass out again. Chrome mistook Joo for a money-hungry soul, but still decided that much more could be expected from the guy. Justice looked at the villain's back and said that Caesar didn't seem to be breathing at all. From the high-rise, someone was watching them. As it turned out, it was Rush from the Guardian team. A member from Atrium spoke into her earpiece to tell the girl that Justice had just signaled that he was in position. Haste replied that she could see it with her own eyes. The blue-haired girl said that in truth it took her a while to get a good vantage point. There were a large number of corpses lying all over the surface. Hurry once again looked with her sky-blue eyes at the whole scene taking place. It seemed to her that something was not right here at all. The copycat was walking forward. He had a very tired look. Chrome asked the guy what that haggard expression was. Joo replied that he was about to die of exhaustion. He meant that it's all great, of course, that he can maintain the transformation without limiting his powers, but it's really wearing him out. Joo said that they'd have to find some other way. His partner said that even so, he was still somehow able to use the powers of justice in their pristine form. She said with a smile on her face that it was quite impressive. The guy blushed and didn't realize what it was. Chrome suddenly looked very cute to Joo. She asked him about if the copycat had tried it. The hero excitedly realized what she was talking about. Joo thought about the fact that if he touched the dead body of the ability holder, maybe the guy could absorb his powers like he had done to Justice that day. He sat down and decided it was definitely worth testing. As the hero's fingers approached the villain's hand, there was a discharge. For a moment, the wannabe came out of reality. What the guy realized was that there was some sort of reaction, but it couldn't absorb the villain's powers. Joo looked at his hand and said he could feel something blocking and throwing him off. Chrome said that maybe the guy can only absorb one power, or it's all because Justice's powers are too big. The hero replied that it was hard to come to any concrete conclusion right now. Chrome exhaled and agreed with the man's words. She took the doorknob and said that either way, Joo did a great job, so he should have a lot of fun tonight. The doppelganger asked her for if there was a party or something like that going on behind that door. Chrome replied with a smile on her face, "Of course there is." Her partner opened the door and white light covered the hero's face. Chrome said that Joo's victory was basically a victory for all the guards and so they should celebrate the incident. The members of the atrium saw the hero and immediately cheered. They said that they had heard that Justice had defeated Caesar himself and had gotten there the fastest. The guard said that there were hardly any serious villains left anymore. He asked the hero if Justice was afraid that at this rate, he would leave them all out of work. Maxrun asked the hero what he would do about it. One of the contestants was very happy with the day. Joo saw something that the guys believe in justice very strongly. They handed him a glass of cold beer. The hero asked them what he was going to do about it. Not thinking long, he exclaimed that he would drink, of course. The guy started drinking in a volley, and the guards cheered loudly at the event. There was someone standing outside the door but not entering the room. Only quiet displeasure could be heard. It was Nivelle. He said disdainfully that those clowns were overly enthusiastic. He added that all the guards were very proud. Nivelle asked his partner if he was going to do something about it. Dryam thought for a moment. The red-eyed guy replied that in the near future, the boys would be far from as happy. Nivelle asked Dryam for if he had planned something for them. Dryam replied with a smirk that he didn't know if he could call it a plan yet. He added that it was likely that the boys' joyful smiles would disappear on their own. The evening passed and a sunny morning came. Joo's alarm clock rang loudly at 7 a.m. The young man aggressively turned it off. The wannabe lay on the bed looking very bad. Joo was not feeling well after last night's party and his head was splitting with pain. He closed his eyes and said that the amount of booze that fit into the characters was no nonsense at all. The guy looked at the exit of the room and said anyway, from now on, he would live here. Joo walked out of the room and put his hand on the lists of the stairs. The young man looked around the room. He was delighted with the views of his new room. Joo came down the stairs and said this place was incredible. The guy asked himself about, or is this premise just normal for the first among the heroes? The guy picked up his phone and said that now that he thought about it, on that smartphone came a large sum of money, namely 2 million won. The man was very happy with this amount of money. Joo said that he had done it and now he was successful. The fun stopped when the young man looked at the chair. He remembered the way in that seat sat bleeding, a true hero who had been ruthlessly destroyed. Joo realized that this wasn't going to end with just getting some money, because Justice had been killed. On his desk lay the autopsy report on Justice that Chrome had given to the young man. The wannabe sat down to read it. The secret autopsy report stated that there were no external injuries. The hero was also not poisoned. The only thing that is of interest is that before he died, Justice used a great deal of his power. Joo couldn't understand what the hell happened that day. At that moment, someone knocked on his door. The doppelganger thought it was Chrome coming at the right time. He called out as he was just starting to look over the autopsy report his partner had given him. The doors slowly began to open, and the guy turned in that direction. Hurry walked into the room. She interjected the hero about what he had just said. Joo wasn't expecting this encounter at all. He hid behind a chair and asked what the fuck. He excitedly asked himself about what Haste had forgotten in the hero's room and why she had come in here like it was her home. The girl looked to the sides and said that just now, she heard his voice. She paused Justice. Hurry noticed a lurching behind the chair. She stepped closer and asked him what the hero was doing there. The guy managed to get out of the awkward moment. With his quick transformation, he started doing push-ups on one finger and said he just decided to warm up. The girl cheerfully said she was surprised that the hero was working out the day after the party. She added that she didn't expect anything less from him. Justice replied that it was nothing. Joo tucked the death report under his nightstand. He asked Haste about why she showed up unannounced. The Guardian member was very unhappy with this question. She said that Justice had been assassinated and it wasn't the first time. The girl angrily added that he needed to talk to someone about it. The hero realized why that day. Haste wasn't surprised. It made sense. If Justice was constantly being tried to kill, there was nothing strange about it. The girl exhaled and said, "Still." Hurry jabbed herself in the positive character's arms. She shyly said that Justice is being very cruel to her since she doesn't tell her anything. Joo was very nervous. The guy could not understand what was going on here. He stammered and said the name of his partner. The girl said that they had a pact. It was that when Justice and Haste were alone together, the man should call her Yangwu. She kept looking at the hero with loving eyes. Joo didn't want to believe that these two had a love connection and were in a relationship. The lady was standing in the hero's arms. Joo interrogated himself. He couldn't believe that Haste was Justice's girlfriend. The wannabe hero was very jealous of him, but there wasn't a word about it in the information Justice had given him. Joo was shocked that the hero had kept this information from him. This information, Hurry asked him about whether he would say something. The man was confused for he did not know what to do. He thought about whether to call the girl by her name. The hero sighed. Justice apologized to Yeonwoo and said that he just wasn't used to the name yet, because calling the girl differently in public. Hurry looked at him silently, as suddenly, she smiled and said that everything was fine. She replied that she was a little upset when Justice called her a hero name. The guy asked fearfully about if it was true. The girl said yes. Rush replied that the hero was very detached out of the blue. At that moment, the girl lowered her hand to her sword. The Guardian team member abruptly pulled out her sharp weapon and struck Justice with it. The hero was wounded in the face and shoulder area. He cringed from the sudden pain. Hurry looked at the man with disdain. The girl replied that she almost believed he was the real Justice. Joo noticed the fact that my lady's weapon scrambled across his desk from behind. He thought she was crazy, as he hadn't expected the girl's sword to be so sharp. Her protective sheath for the sharp weapon fell off. She says before she asks the young man the next question. First she would chop off the man's arm, or better a couple. She could see the anger in Haste's eyes, and her hands, already in position. Hurry, she was the deputy head of the Guardians, which was led by Justice himself. She prepared herself to the point of attacking a not real hero. The man asked her to stop. In the hero's manner, there was a complete mess. All the things that were there were slashed by Haste's sword. The girl didn't miss a single item in that house. Absolutely everything was cut into small pieces. Joo shouted, "Shit." She had a super speed speedster. She was dissecting objects as if they were made of tofu. The guy had already realized that Haste was fast, but also skilled with her blade. The hero was hit by the sharp blade and had bruises on his body. It didn't take long for Haste to stop his attack, drawing his sword back, but it was a distraction. She ran towards the young man with great speed, blade in hand. The hero decided that he needed to use his power immediately. He gathered all his power and told the girl to stop. Joo stopped the sword with his hands using his power. The copycat loudly told Haste to stop now. The girl stepped back and the young man held onto his shoulder. The Guardian's team member averted her gaze and said that the guy looked like Justice. But still, the stranger was wasting his strength. Her eyes were filled with doubt. The hero said that Haste was right, but thanks to that his hands, still about him. Justice added that let him be injured. But more importantly, the hero can't maintain that state indefinitely. Joo got into a fighting stance. He said that if that's the case, he would have to deal with Haste after he recovered. He decided to attack the girl with his fists. The partner dodged the hero's attack. Justice hit the floor so that the surface shattered into small pieces. Hurry said she knew the way the young man had defeated Caesar himself, namely with brute force. She exhaled and said there was one but. The girl did not see the point of it, for the boy could not match his power. The deputy head again dodged the blow of Justice. Joo did not expect such a thing. The rush suddenly hurt the young man's torso. She replied that she advised the hero to stop wasting his strength to block her attacks, because if the girl wanted to, the guy would have been chopped into small pieces long ago. The girl told Justice not to twitch and then it wouldn't hurt too much. Joo asked Haste about if she were in his shoes, she too would have naively agreed like he did. There was anger in her eyes and agility in her movements. She said if that's what it was all about. The man had an epiphany. His eyes opened several times wider. Rush stabbed through Justice's chest with her sharp blade, Joo writhing in horrible pain. A stream of the young man's blood spilled onto the white floor. Joo said the girl was so fast that he couldn't have hit her even if he wanted to. Haste hadn't expected this outcome at all. Justice grabbed the girl's arm. He swung his fist viciously and said that just might do it this way. Joo hit Haste with all his might, still holding the sword stuck in his chest. From the man's attack, the girl's head turned to the other side. After the blow, the hero looked at Speshka and said he wasn't entirely sure for whether or not he had even hit anywhere. The partner was very angry and her cheek was red from the punch. She asked the guy about how dare he pretend to be Justice. Joo had a bad feeling about the whole thing. He decided that he should hurry to hit while he still had a chance. But as soon as the hero wanted to attack, there was no word from the girl. He aggressively said Haste as if he had vaporized. At this moment, the deputy head was standing behind him. She said that she was thinking that she could not hold back any further. Haste added that now he would definitely not get off with a pair of hands. The girl decided to use all her power to the maximum. Her strong power had a name. Thousand/wind blade stream. Hundreds of sharp blades began to enter the young man's body. The hero's body was covered in cuts, and the guy himself was screaming loudly in pain. A twisting blade that wanted to chop off his arm caught his eye. The sharp instrument of Haste began to touch the man's very skin. But suddenly, unknown purple shadows appeared in Joo's room. They completely enveloped the blade, thus stopping the girl's sinister action. Hurry looked at her sword and guessed what those shadows were. Justice didn't realize what had just happened. It was Chrome. She said that Haste is still such a fanatic when it comes to justice. Joo tearfully called out the name of her partner who had come. Then Haste said she sees that Chrome is also in on it. She asked the guy's co-conspirator about if she would try to explain what's going on here. She angrily said that in the end, Chrome's shadows wouldn't be able to stop her. Joo's partner looked at the girl. Chrome told her about the fact that in fact, Justice had been killed. Hurry loudly asked Chrome if she was being completely serious about what she was saying that Justice was dead. She excitedly said that it appeared that the guy was just playing the role of a hero and nothing more. The guy was back to his normal self. His wounds were treated and covered with band-aids, and Joo said it just happened. Chrome said they had no other choice and needed to replace the hero immediately. Haste loudly asked them if they even realized what they had done. She pointed her finger at the guy and said that even if he has justice powers he is still very sloppy. Haste asked them about how long their submission would last. The Guardian contestant said that the girl will be exposed right away. Chrome replied that either way, they can buy at least a little time before that happens. Joo added that they needed time to figure out who killed Justice and why. Rush aggressively said that they didn't need that because the killer would be coming soon and for Joo. He replied that he wouldn't. The man corrected his words. Joo said that no one can come for him since only they know about Justice's death. Chrome and Haste decided to question what the guy said. They didn't understand how Joo could be sure of that. The wannabe sat thinking with a frown on his eyebrows. Chrome asked the guy about how he knew that. Then Haste said that there had been an absolute mass murder yesterday, but so far, there was no information on that. She asked in surprise that although no one knew for who the killer was, would Justice come to the conclusion that there was a mishap in his murder? He replied that he doubted it very much. The girl covered her eyes with her hand at such a ridiculous answer. The deputy head headed towards the exit. Chrome asked her where she was going. Hurry turned around and frowned her eyebrows, saying that it was still unknown how long this would last, so she wanted to take a walk and get her thoughts in order. Joo said in a frustrated voice that Haste hated him now. Chrome responded by telling the guy not to take it personally. Her partner said there's no one else who follows justice as faithfully as she does, and it's likely that Haste really does have a mess in his head. Chrome told her that now on Team Guardian, Haste was virtually the only liaison. Before, Justice alone had been the one to keep track of the team's routines, and now that he was gone, the heroes could scatter anywhere, leaving Haste alone. She asked if such people were worthy of calling themselves heroes, and Chrome said they were no different from a herd of sheep that always needed to be led. Her partner ducked down to the boy and said that for that very reason, they must carry out the intended purpose, by all means to ensure that the heroes do not leave their posts. They would do it so that hope would continue to burn in the hearts of the people. Joo thought for a moment. It had not been clear to him before that Chrome had decided to embark on such a venture. He smiled wryly, for now he understood the whole situation. The boy told Chrome not to worry. He asked the girl if she had seen how the hero had brilliantly fooled everyone yesterday. Joo added that if he continued like this, he would be able to skillfully wield his mouth. The girl looked at her phone and hesitated. The wannabe asked her if something had happened. Chrome asked Joo about whether he was ready for a second mission. They decided to pay a visit to the atrium's dining room. The hero sat frustratedly at the table and didn't eat at all. Everyone around him was whispering about him and talking about what Justice was doing here. With his side vision, Joo saw a young guy and a girl standing suspiciously not far from him. He decided to turn to his partner to ask her what he needed to do. Chrome replied that the guy had already done everything and he didn't need to worry. The girl said that recently there was a complete assassination attempt on Justice, so Joo in turn must show all the people that he is alive and well. The guy replied that he understood that. The hero asked her about whether he needed to pretend when he was just eating. Chrome replied to let Joo get used to it, but what she can say is that there will be less of that in the future. She added that it's because of what will be from among the heroes today. The hero asked her, from? The partner pointed her finger in the direction. The young man turned to look. Justice noticed about 5 unusual silhouettes walking forward. Chrome asked him about Joo seeing these heroes. The girl said that they were going to the biggest event in the atrium. This event is where the heroes decide which of the 4 hero teams they can join. It's like an open house at universities. She added that it's just that this event is just a bit bigger. The hero exclaimed that it's a very important day. Joo asked her fearfully about what he should do in that case. He thought he would have to fight the villains again. The partner briefly told the guy to get up. Picking up the food tray, Chrome said she would tell him all about it on the way. The guys came to a huge field where there were many people, Joo loudly marveling at the view. The girl nudged him with her elbow and told him to shut his mouth for they might think Justice was scared. The hero said he never thought this event would be held here. Joo said there were more heroes than he'd seen the last time they'd met. He asked Chrome once more for what he needed to do after all. His partner replied that there was nothing. Chrome turned around and repeated her words about the hero not needing to do anything. Ja was surprised. He didn't understand how the strongest hero didn't need to prove his strength in the arena. The partner added that Justice should just sit quietly and watch what was going on. The wannabe turned around and said that this was going to be more boring than he thought. At the very beginning on the left side, sat 2 teams, namely Condor and Union. On the right side were the superhumans and an empty seat for the Guardians. Joo said that it seemed to him that the superhumans and Union had the most people. Chrome replied that it was more likely that the Guardians had lost their value. Chrome talked about the fact that each member has quite a bit of power, so it's only natural that they would want to use it to their advantage here. While the guys were dialoguing, a disgruntled Haste approached them. The hero asked her about whether she had come. The girl replied so the guy wouldn't think about her being on their side. Haste angrily said that if she decided to play along with them, it doesn't mean that she is fine with everything. Joo was very angry after Haste's words. He didn't understand who could be okay with that. The hero thought about the fact that the girl still thought he was responsible for Justice's death. Chrome exclaimed that the event had begun. The guy's attention immediately turned to the arena. 2 young men could be seen on the field. A voiceover thanking everyone for waiting. The first man had berry hair and pale-colored skin. The second guy had a tanned body and olive-colored hair. The referee shouted loudly that the match between the Guardians and the Superhumans declared open. The dark-skinned man swung his stone hand towards his opponent, but the man, with a smirk on his face, easily avoided the attack. The contestant from the Superhumans team decided to use his power. He punched his opponent in the stomach with all his might. The man flew back a little and groaned. The young man from the Guardian said that the hero was a pretty fast kid. The berry-haired guy's face was wearing an unrelenting smirk. A guy with superpowers. The guy touched the floor to fully activate his power. He deftly and high pounced on his opponent from above. Joo asked the girl about why these two started fighting all of a sudden. Chrome replied that this battle is a kind of PR that serves to attract attention. Hero asked about the fact that it turns out this is just a friendly match. Her partner said she doesn't know. Chrome said it's pretty hard to call this match friendly. At this point, the contestant from Superhumans had his opponent on the floor. He forcefully began to put pressure on his head and arm. The opponent's hand twisted and began to blush violently. Joo excitedly shouted for them to stop. The partner with a serious face reminded the hero that he didn't need to do anything. The guy interjected her. The wannabe asked her about whether she wanted to leave it at that. Joo said that the guy was just bullying his opponent. Chrome replied that these fights are fierce power battles between teams. She added that the contestant from Superhumans is basically not doing anything that should have been stopped immediately. Her partner said that even if the guy is Justice, he should not be allowed to interfere. The hero stood up and watched silently as the man was admired for his actions. The guy with the berry hair asked his opponent if he was giving up before the superhuman contestant finally broke his arms. The young man began to taunt his opponent for he could not surrender while his arm was chained to the floor. The hero said that now he would probably start. But as suddenly, the hand of a member of the team Superhumans someone stopped. The guy was shocked. Curry and Crone were very embarrassed by the wannabe's act. Joo remembered his little sister talking about how later, her brother would go to where the other heroes would be. The boy asked her about whether she meant the atrium. The little girl laughed and said that her brother wants to go to atrium too and he has a very cute face. She thanked Joo for always cheering her up. The guy asked her who else besides her wants to go there. The brother said that if he goes there, he will take his sister with him anyway. The girl was very happy. She asked if it was true. Sis asked Joo about him promising her that. The guys shook each other's little fingers. She said with a smile on her face that there will be many heroes who are bravely fighting against the villains. Sis added that the city is so safe only because of them. Justice held the man's hand and said that they were the only ones who were the hope and support for people, while the member of the Superhumans team continued to grin and laugh as he tormented a hero like himself. The hero looked at him with disdain and asked if he was ashamed. All of this was happening on a huge field. These words didn't hurt that guy in any way. He only interjected about what Justice had told him. And afterward, the superhuman asked the hero about why he was meddling in their affairs. The guy with the berry hair couldn't believe that the Guardian people had become such sleuths. Justice said that the guy shouldn't do such a thing to his comrades, because of the number one hero standing in front of the guy. Then he would tell him more gently. The young man with a smirk on his face asked Justice about what he would do if he didn't listen to him. The contestant from the Superhumans team started to use with force. Justice then tried to stop him with his power. The pale guy said with a smile that his powers were controlling gravity and enhancing magical abilities. He asked about what kind of fool would grab the hand of someone who could suck out someone else's power and enhance his own. He decided that it would be a good idea to grab and blast this grief hero right now. The hero grabbed the young man's wrist with all his might. The participant of the match groaned from the sudden pain. Joo asked the hero in surprise. Why? Justice twisted his arm and asked about whether he couldn't raise his right arm and just give up. The hero asked him very angrily about why the Superhumans team member didn't. The wannabe frowned his eyebrows and asked the young lad, why? He asked about whether it wasn't possible to raise his right hand and surrender. The hero asked the match participant about why he didn't. The guy from the Superhumans was squirming violently in sharp pain, as suddenly, an unfamiliar arm encircled the young man. It was Dryam. He pulled the contestant's hand away from Justice. Joo wasn't expecting this man at all. He was a little flustered. Dryam asked the hero if he wanted to participate in the fights. The man readied his power and said if Justice was so insistent. He used all his power and pointed his hand with red lines at the hero. Justice didn't realize what had happened. Dryam began to walk closer and closer to the man. He asked Justice about whether the hero thought he should fight someone of his own level. Everyone in the audience was shocked by the event. They were wondering if Justice would actually fight Dryam and if it would be unforgettable. Rush shouted loudly, no. Chrome looked at Heist. It was no surprise to her that the girl was all worked up after what had happened. The hero's partner realized that Lee JooWon could barely control Justice's power. The girl added that considering the way he had won earlier, he doesn't stand a chance against Dryam. The hero turned to his partner and said that they didn't need to stab each other but should only. But Dryam interrupted and said that he didn't agree with Justice's words. Dryam with eyes as red as rubies asked Justice about what would become of his authority if he inadvertently backtracked. The man replied seriously that it wouldn't happen. The wannabe frowned his eyebrows and thought for a moment. He decided to use the full force of his power. Joo prepared his fist that was full of power and headed towards his opponent. Just as suddenly, Dryam deftly dodged. Dryam stopped the man's hand and said as he realized that the hero had become determined. The opponent added that there was a small but. Justice had forgotten something. The guy didn't understand anything. The power of Joo gradually began to leave the body of the hero. The Superhumans team member said that now it was his turn. He prepared his fist. A huge red ball with a fast speed began to move towards the hero. Joo put a block on the attack, but the force hurt his arm. The copycat tried to strike again, but again the young man dodged the blow. Drayam had a caustic smile on his face, and after that, the opponent began to use his power even harder so that Justice groaned in pain. The hero was thrown back a bit. He said that this was all very strange. It appeared to him that Drayam had displayed his own attack. The man with red eyes said with a smirk that Justice was kind of weak and didn't look like himself at all. Drayam added the fact that the young man was losing his grip. He swung at his opponent again with his arm red with power. The boy put the block back on himself again. Chrome couldn't believe that Joo would continue to allow himself to be beaten. She didn't understand what was going on here. Her partner hoped that the young man had figured out on his own that Drayam's ability is absorption of other people's powers. Drayam absorbs any power of the opponent and then attacks with it with a multiplied coefficient, adding his own power to the others. No matter how strong the attack is, the man can't take it, because his own strength means that only the owner of the attack will be hit by it. Chrome excitedly said that if this continued, Joo would lose in disgrace because of the fun one-sided fight. After a strong attack, the man got into a fighting stance. Drayam opened his arms to the side and asked the hero about the fact that he had nothing at all to do in his direction. The opponent added that if he really stood in front of him, the #1 hero, the pride of Team Guardian, the opponent couldn't believe that the famous hero of this time was standing in front of him. The people around started whispering. They didn't understand what was happening to Justice and why he was allowing himself to be beaten so brazenly. Joo shouted, "Shit." The man thought that at this rate, the heroes might suspect something. He was very agitated that he started to be guided only by his reflexes, completely shutting off his brain. If the hero would just follow Chrome's instructions, he would get himself 2 billion and not get involved in any bullshit. Drayam went on the attack again. He asked Justice about how long the hero planned to be a punching bag. However, the guy couldn't stand to see the hero behave in a completely unheroic manner, only reveling in his impunity and bullying his comrades. Suddenly, Joo had an idea with the help of which the guy will be able to defeat the opponent. The opponent rejoiced and said that Justice finally began to fight. He added that if the hero tries, they will have a draw. Just as suddenly, a huge wall of Justice's power overwhelmed the man's strength. Drayam tried with all his might to stop him. Joo realized that although he was no match for the true Justice, there was a way that would defeat Drayam's existence. If he could only channel a stream of magic that he could not swallow. Everything around him glowed a blue, vibrant color. The opposing aggressive called the hero a bastard. There was anger in his eyes, and he himself was trying to fight to the last man. One side of the hero was bright blue, and the other side where Drayam was red. Hurry and Chrome covered their face from the shards. Chrome said she was surprised that the guy was starting to get things going. She was wondering how long it would all last. The two heroes were very angry with each other. The girl added that if left as it is, Atrium would disintegrate into atoms. Justice and Drayam did not expect this turn of events at all. They were pushed away from each other, and small pieces from the stadium sprinkled all over the surface. Joo thought for a moment why his body felt so heavy. Some stranger walked before them with words about what they were getting up to. It was Arcadia. He held out his hand and asked them a question regarding whether the heroes were even looking around. The wannabe recognized the young man. He was a member of the Union team. The guy couldn't even move from his seat. Arcadia told them to stop this childishness and not to do this sort of thing in places like this from now on. He took his powers off Justice and Drayam. The guys felt much better and easier to move. Drayam grudgingly left the match, the hero glancing in his direction. Soon, the wannabe also decided to leave the arena. He realized the fact that he had made a lot of messes, as suddenly, the hero's name was shouted by someone. It was the guy that the hero had stood up for. The man asked Justice about how he was so worried about him that he even decided to stand up for him. The wounded guy bent down to thank the hero. He added that he would never forget his generosity. Justice was flustered and said it was okay. The hero wanted to say that he was only, as suddenly other people came running towards him. They started talking about how Drayam was lucky in stopping them, otherwise the opponent would have lost. The guys were really admiring Justice. Joo even heard the way people from the other teams talking about him in a good way. The wannabe exhaled. He said with a small smile that he was lucky in the fact that all of this had gone so easily. The boys returned to the building where the hero resided. Chrome placed a small stack of sheets on the table. The young man asked her what it was. Her partner replied that it was a list of the heroes who had joined the 4 teams. Joo looked at the results and was shocked. Chrome added that thanks to his goofy antics and the Atrium things had improved a bit. But despite that, the Guardians were still defeated. Ju asked in surprise about whether there was such a big difference between the teams. Hurry replied, "Not really." She said that their hero had lost that day, but in the current situation, with the villain's forces greatly weakened, there was still no one who would consciously want to join the Guardian. Haste then added that at this rate, all power would be concentrated in the hands of the already notorious Superhumans team. The young boy asked them for whether that was a problem. Chrome said that Ju seemed oblivious to who populated that team. Despite how much power the members of this group have, they behaved just as badly as the villains. The partner asked Ju if he thought that if these people had that much power in their hands, would they pat justice on the back? The young man then suggested that they give it a try, form their own alliance. Chrome asked him who they would call, since El Condor was too radical and the superhumans were out of the question, leaving only the Union team. Hurry said that it seems that they can only invite them to their alliance, but the girl doubted very much that the team would agree. Chrome answered that if the guys themselves would not initiate the alliance. Copycat asked them about whether it was difficult. Hurry questioned him again. He replied that it would be a bit difficult to reincarnate into two people at once. Chrome absolutely did not expect such a turn of events. She asked in surprise, "Really?" The young man showed his phone and said that he would do it, but only for the salary of hero number 1. On the face of Ju had a snide smile. The guys came to the poolside event. There was quite a large number of people. At this party, the music was playing loudly and everyone was having fun. Some, while having fun, sat by the pool and just chatted about their own stuff. Copycat asked Chrome about why they came here. She replied that Wilhelm was ranked 3rd among the Union team members, and unlike other groups, the placement on Team Union is not based on strength but on his popularity. She thinks it's pretty hard to truly call Wilhelm a hero, thanks to the parties he throws every day. The man's connections are plentiful. Chrome told her that today at Union there should be a vote on which William himself will participate. Ju guessed that he needed to rig the man's results. His partner asked the guy about whether he was sure he could pull it off, and also asked for Ju's plan of action. The young man exhaled and replied that it wasn't one of those things worthy of praise. Into JooWon's gaze, a beautiful girl with red hair flung herself at him. He shouted about how he already had one good idea coming to him. The girl didn't know what the guy was talking about. The others were still having fun and having a great time as well. The two guests noticed something and one of the men told his friend to look at it. As it turned out, that way was Wilhelm. The guy was walking forward proudly smiling and behind him was his partner. The hero stood behind the counter and addressed the guys. Wilhelm cheerfully said that this was the most amazing party. He added that there was no law that required them to do this daily routine of saving people. The man added that all he does is throw parties. Everyone around him laughed at his jokes. The young man said for all of them to forget about their duties today and party until the wee hours of the morning. The guy came out of the counter and waved to the guests with a smile on his face. His servant said about Wilhelm having enough alcohol for today. The man chuckled and replied that he hadn't even started yet. The man turned to his partner. He said he didn't understand how anyone could dress like that at all for a party. The guy asked the gentleman about whether it wasn't proper for a servant to dress like that. Wilhelm said that it was a very stupid waste of such a pretty face. He could not understand who would put such a boring boy to the master. Ahead of him he could see the silhouette of the girl. The man decided that it would be better to go out and meet some beauty. As suddenly, this girl crashed into the torso of the guy. She spilled a drink on Wilhelm. The man was very angry. He loudly and aggressively shouted that his thing is very expensive and you need to watch your step. The girl made innocent eyes and apologized. She said she didn't notice the young man because she had too much to drink. Madame offered to clear it up for him. Wilhelm said there was nothing wrong with that and such things often happened at parties. She jabbed a finger at the man's chest and said confidently that there would be no such thing. The stranger added that she would very much like to clean that stain in a private place. The smile never faded from Wilhelm's face. He put his arm around the girl and told her that if that was what she really wanted, they would go. The man told his servant to keep order in his absence. The young man remained silent. Wilhelm reached his room and began to enter the password to access the inside. The doors opened. The man said it was his most prestigious suite. The stranger replied that the room looked very cool. The man blushed and asked the girl about her plans. When suddenly, the lady's hand gained a super ability. She punched the young man with all her might with her fist. Afterward, the stranger thanked Wilhelm for letting her in person. As it turned out, Joo took the guise of one girl at the party. He told the hero to rest his belly down for a while. The guy needed to find the tablet that Chrome told him about, since it was on it that the conference should be held. After a while, the young man did find that tablet. There was not only retinal recognition, but also a fingerprint. It seemed to Joo that Wilhelm was a cautious guy, although from the outside you couldn't tell. The wannabe was happy that there was no password on the tech. Their conference was already underway. Everyone in the chat room was shocked that Wilhelm had joined them. Arkady said that the man was pretty early today. The partner added that instead of being surprised, it would be wise to praise Wilhelm for showing up at all since the man was now at the party. Arcadia said that they should get down to business. He decided, just in case, to reiterate to the man that at this conference, they should decide whether to cooperate with Team Guardian. An absolute majority vote would be the Union team's final decision on this and their number. The man added that for the very beginning, he needs to sort everyone by popularity. Joo thought that this was crazy, because in order to give his vote, you have to sacrifice a popularity point. He thought that this was not even a vote, but an entertainment show. The guy could not believe that this is really the true face of the Union team. Then the wannabe recalled Chrome's words where she talked about how after the villain's powers had weakened considerably, the opinions in Union had become extremely polarized. The young man understood the fact that Wilhelm's vote could affect the outcome of the vote. All the members of the group posted in chat that they had already voted. Arcadia asked them if they were done already. The man said he would look at the results now. When he started looking, he found something rather strange. Bencher asked him about whether something had happened. He said not really. Afterward, the Union team leader said that the results surprised him a bit. Arcadia said that since they amicably decided everything, their team will act according to the result of the vote. He added that he hoped no one is against it. Joo turned off the tablet and exhaled with relief. Chrome was already waiting for him at the entrance. The young man asked her about how long she had been standing here. Her partner didn't say anything but only asked a question regarding how everything went. The wannabe purposely got excited and asked again. And afterwards, with a wide smile on his face, he said that he had done 2 billion worth of work. The next day, Wilhelm woke up with a terrible pain in his neck. The man said that the servant was right and that he was a little too drunk last night. The partner asked the hero for if he really didn't remember anything. Wilhelm shouted that he did not remember and most likely, sex with such a beauty was incredible, but the man did not remember it at all. He also added that yesterday he managed to take part in a conference. The servant interrogated him. The man replied that as soon as he opened the tablet, he immediately noticed the fact that he had already cast his vote. The hero said that most likely he did it as soon as he entered his room, and already then, took on a really important matter. The servant was silent. Wilhelm became curious about who the girl was. He asked the servant if he still had the contact of the stranger. The man asked the Union team member to provide him with a list of all the guests present yesterday. The next day, the guys headed to the house of JooWon himself. The wannabe went ahead to see one thing. He reached over and swung open the closet doors. The young man looked at his closet and said that he was thinking that all of his clothes should be thrown out as well. For a while, Joo should follow Justice's behavior more thoroughly, so he decided to take everything he needed with him. It seemed to him that Heist's disgruntled mien had already fallen into a routine. As Joo continued to go through all the items in his closet, he asked himself if it would be easier to buy what was missing. Under one of the sweaters, a corner of a painting was visible. The man took the item in his hands. It turned out to be a family portrait of a young boy he had forgotten all about. He was sure that if Sung-ah could just see him transform into Justice, her face would be overflowing with delight. He decided that he needed to take that family portrait with him when suddenly, the frame cracked sharply and the photo flew away. The photo rolled under Joo's bed. The copycat bent under the bed to see how far the picture had flown. The man picked up the bottom of the bed and said he was sick of all this. With the help of counting, Joo wanted to lift the bed. But suddenly, he did not calculate his strength and the bed was right on the ceiling. The young man failed to realize what had just happened in his room. The doppelganger and Chrome were in Justice's office. The young man told Chrome that he had had it since the morning. His partner asked him for if he was feeling it now. Joo decided to test it out and picked up a ballpoint pen. Just from one touch from the guy, it disintegrated into little pieces. The wannabe replied that the girl saw it all by herself. Chrome said that it was likely that the man had become more sensitive to Justice's abilities. She added that the superpower had begun to awaken. The young man not realizing what Chrome was saying. The partner said that it was like human muscles and the more often Joo used superpowers, the stronger it would become, especially if a newcomer did it. After that, Chrome said that it's likely that the guy was thinking for the fact that with his ability he can can only copy the appearance, but Joo's potential is much higher than he thinks. The girl told the young man to focus on his work now, the wannabe asking her if it was already time for the conference. All the guys gathered in one chat room for discussion. Arcadia apologized for forcing them into a video conference. He said it was all because of his urgent business trip. Nivelle asked him to stop and get to the point. He said with a smirk on his face that they only had one topic on the agenda today, and that was more productive allocation of their forces. The guy said that was exactly what he had mentioned earlier. Arcadia replied that Nivelle was right and that was what the conversation would be about. After a brief pause, Arcadia yelled out that Union had decided to form an alliance with Team Guardian. Nivelle was very angry at such news. He aggressively asked him about why such conclusions all of a sudden. Then Arcadia said that all decisions depend on the results of the vote, and as it turned out, the majority thought that they should concentrate on catching the remaining villains. The man said that as the head of the team, he fully respects the opinion of its members, but such a final verdict did not suit the young man at all. The hero asked Arcadia about what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Zeus turned to Nibelius. He asked him about why Nivelle on the words focus on catching the remaining villains. Suddenly starting to voice his displeasure so abruptly, Zeus stood with a slain villain in his hands. The hero asked Nibelius if he had a good reason as to why he was so drawn to this. Nibelius aggressively replied that as a result of their last mission, the villain's main base had been destroyed. Justice thought that continuing to keep kicking a dead horse was a waste of time. He said that his thoughts on the situation were fundamentally different. Justice said that mopping up the main camp was no guarantee of getting rid of the enemy, and now, more than ever, they should hold on to that opportunity after the main strike to finish off the remaining factions. One of the participants was in complete solidarity with their head's opinion, and Pandora asked Nibelius if he had any reason as to why he had suddenly decided to side with the villains. The man wanted to speak up, but was told to stop. Drum says that the decision was unanimous and he can't argue against it. He added that the complete elimination of the villains will bring peace and deliverance. After that, the Superhumans member also said that he can call their opinion right. Drum says that this time too they should be in solidarity with the Guardian's opinion. Chrome aggressively replied that even through force, she would never believe that Nibelius and Drum agreed with them. After the conference, Chrome went to Joo's house to look at how badly the bed had hit the ceiling. There was a huge dent on top from the impact. Her partner was shocked. The girl looking up at the ceiling said it was just awful. The young man agreed with her with awkwardness in his voice. Chrome asked the guy about what he planned to justify himself to the mistress. Joo, taking out the trash, answered that he would just give her a wad of money. The guy said that ever since the day he first transformed, then some unknown shit started happening. Joo also wanted to ask Chrome for why she was doing it. The partner interjected. The wannabe said that they seem to have a normal market relationship. He works and Chrome pays and she doesn't have to worry about the guy at all. The partner replied that as long as justice is alive, the heroes will behave as they should in reality. She added that they should not deny that this mission was also unsafe for him, but there was another reason. Chrome lowered her eyes and said that this reason was a bit personal, but without proving it completely. She fell silent. The girl put on her black hood and told Joo to keep her head down. The man thought about doing something wrong. Doppelganger walked to the door and thought about how he better not ask about this incident anytime soon. The silhouette of a man with gray hair appeared in front of them. Joo remembered that this was the same guard who had been by Wilhelm's side that evening. The stranger said that the girl had a familiar face, and afterwards said that in front of him stood Chrome herself from Team Guardian. He said with a smile on his face that he was rather surprised to cross paths with her in a place like this. Chrome replied that he obviously wouldn't have come here to see an acquaintance. The girl asked the servant about why he was here. Wilhelm's guard's name was Stiletto. The servant said that he saw another familiar face in front of him. He said Joo's full name and age, and after that, Stiletto questioned if the young man could change his appearance. The wannabe was frightened. The guard smilingly said that it was quite an entertaining ability. However, there was something he couldn't understand, namely, what Joo came to the party last night for. The wannabe pretended not to understand anything, but Stiletto said that there was no way for the guy to get away, because Wilhelm's maid had already looked at all the security cameras and made sure that Joo was there. He said that on one of the cameras, it was clearly visible that Joo had transformed into a girl and stealthily walked out of the hotel. Stiletto added that after that, the doppelganger did everything he wanted it to do, and having managed to get the job done, Joo reverted back to his original appearance. In his thoughts, the copycat realized that he had missed one of the cameras at Wilhelm's party after all. Joo nervously began to tell that Stiletto misunderstood everything. In fact, the guy did not want to see Wilhelm Wilhelm at all. The double said that he was just a little drunk and accidentally bumped into him, and Wilhelm began to talk to him seductively, which Joo did not refuse. Stiletto then asked a question regarding whether it was just a coincidence and ridiculous paranoia. The guard's gaze turned stern and crazed. Wilhelm's partner asked Joo about how he would explain his transformation into justice to him. The wannabe excitedly interjected. Stiletto said he couldn't be sure, but he had an interesting suggestion. He abruptly pulled his tooth out of his mouth. The servant didn't even squirm from the pain. Joo fearfully asked Chrome what the man pulled his tooth out for. His partner told him to be quiet, throwing his tooth. Wilhelm's guard said, "I won't allow it." The young man's actual tooth flew toward the girl, when he was already near Chrome. Then up above the girl, a strange cloth appeared. It completely began to cover the girl. The young man excitedly shouted his partner's name. This force completely enclosed Chrome in a small, oval-shaped room. A sharp, white line appeared on Stiletto's arm. The servant saying that they would now return to the conversation they had started earlier. He pointed his implement forward and said he had something he wanted to test even Joo's prized life. Joo loudly questioned Stiletto for what he was doing. The servant replied that he had told them back in the beginning that he wanted to check something out. He added that lately, he'd started to notice a significant change in Justice's behavior. Stiletto said that even if the assassination attempt that the hero had mentioned was taken into account, the comparison of the facts still yielded results that were not obvious. After that incident, the guard wondered if Chrome, Justice's apprentice, had among her acquaintances such a person who could copy someone else's appearance. He looked at Joo and said that this person, right now, was standing in front of him. Wilhelm's guard swooped down on the young man with incredibly great speed. With his sharp, cone-shaped weapon, Stiletto slashed the wannabe's neck. They kept a short distance between each other. Joo angrily took hold of his neck. The doppelganger didn't understand why the heroes couldn't avoid being separated even in situations like this. Stiletto said that even a child with primitive combinatorics could understand what this guy was. The servant asked Joo for whether he would say something in his defense. The young man continued to hold on to his neck as well. Joo lifted his head and said with crazed eyes that the man had said a complete fucked up thing. Wilhelm's guard wasn't expecting that response at all. Stiletto decided to use his cone-shaped implement, but already on the other hand, he said it was really stupid to expect Joo to confess anything. Already with 2 sharp strokes he went not wannabe. The guy with blonde hair said he would pursue the truth from him, but in a different way. He walked slowly towards the guy. Joo thought about the fact that Stiletto might have been the one who killed Justice that day. The copycat came to the conclusion that it didn't matter now and decided to use his power. He thought for the fact that if he told Stiletto the whole truth he would lose all his money. The young man headed out with his attack on the guard. The opponent stopped the attack from Joo's side. Stiletto said that to control his power, the boy never learned. William's guard also added that if he had Justice's power, he would be much better at handling it. Joo replied that the adversary was just upset that he didn't have that power. Opponent asked the double for thinking he was being too irresponsible. Stiletto added that if Joo continued to plan to only dispose of it to fulfill his needs, he would make sure that the copycat died. The guy with the blonde hair swung his arm to attack his enemy. Joo managed to stop the cone-like weapon, right in front of his face. The wannabe fell to the floor as the servant began to push against him. Their struggle continued. Stiletto was still trying to impale Joo with his sharp cone, but the boy resisted. Suddenly, Wilhelm's guard stood up abruptly. He looked at his hand. A small burn had appeared on it and there was also smoke coming from it. While Stiletto was distracted, Joo decided to seize the moment and pounced on his enemy. Wilhelm's guard said that it looked like the guy was fighting full force. He also added that there's probably just no way Joo can wake up. Copycat angrily questioned him. Stiletto said that through prodding, you can increase your stats and become much stronger, as if it's a gym where a guy's physical stats increase. The opponent continued his story. He added that a hero's strength only increases based on his most sincere motivations, as that is the only way to shine brighter than others. The servant said that it was obvious that Joo was wasting this gifted power without even knowing of any motivation. He added that it was a very foolish waste. Wilhelm's guard asked the guy about whether he thought holding his hands would be enough. Stiletto said he could spread the power to any part of his body. He started attacking Joo from his elbows, from which also came sharp, cone-shaped strokes. The wannabe had time to bend over from the approaching blow of the enemy. Joo grabbed his opponent's stomach with aggression. The young man grabbed the servant and ran with him toward the building. He slammed Stiletto against the brick wall with all his might. And after all that, Joo took him by the head, in order to mercilessly slam his opponent against his knee. The doppelganger groaned at the pain in his leg. Stiletto asked the man about which part of the body had the strongest bones. The opponent's face changed to hell. He said that the answer to that question was simple as hell. Pointing to his head, he said that the cranium had the strongest bones. The wannabe was still in no way able to move away from the pain in his knee. Joo looked at his enemy and realized what he hadn't thrown a single punch at him. Wilhelm's guard annoyed him, but he had to accept that his enemy was right. From the beginning, Joo was only interested in conspiracy. He also wanted to end the bullshit he'd been dragged into as soon as possible. However, Joo used to hate himself for not being strong enough to protect the people he cared about. Realizing that he had acquired this notorious power, Joo wondered what he started doing after he got it. Stiletto says that at this point, the copycat can't even scratch him. He told Joo to give up and not waste their time. The doppelganger realized that the servant was right, since, even with Justice's strength, Joo could barely defeat Wilhelm's guard, but the boy realized that in any case, he still had a trump card up his sleeve. Joo swung around and unleashed his attack. The sharp, cone-shaped weapon halted any movement of the man. All around him was smoke. Stiletto questioned him about whether Joo knew about the guy being incapable of hurting him. The wannabe had a snide smile on his face. He turned toward his opponent and asked the servant about who had told him about the fact that Joo was aiming for him. From behind the boys came the purple shadows of Chrome. Stiletto was enveloped in Chrome's power. The man hadn't expected this turn of events at all. Chrome thanked her partner for the release. She jabbed her finger at her opponent and said that now she had a lot of questions, but first she should teach Stiletto a lesson, as his old grudge was probably stuck between the man's teeth. The guy with the blonde hair sighed unhappily. The girl asked Stiletto to let her beat the worthless shit out of him. Chrome directed her superpower at the young man, which compressed his entire body. Stiletto tried to cut the black tape with his sharp cone that was in the palm of his hand. Failure awaited him. He averted his eyes and said he was clear. Joo added with a smirk on his face that the man was still thinking. After that, the same sharp but gill-like bones formed in the guy's elbows. Wilhelm's guard asked if he hadn't told the guys that he could use his power any way he wanted. Stiletto got out of the ribbon's embrace. The enemy moved towards the girl with all speed. Chrome decided to use her superpower again. She aimed about 4 dark twists at the young man. Stiletto managed to put up a block and dodge the girl's attack. After that, the opponent ripped her sharp, cone-like fang from her palm. This was done so that Wilhelm's guard threw it straight at Chrome. Joo's partner managed to dodge the attack. Justice's student was very angry and called her opponent a bastard. Stiletto pounced on the girl. The man extended his palm with a sharp cone right into her face. Chrome was gone so fast it felt like she was just disappearing. The girl found herself behind the young man. She decided to use her power again. Joo was shocked to see Stiletto fighting at full strength. The opponent is not at all inferior in strength to Justice's apprentice. Chrome shortens the distance and attacks with shadows. Wilhelm's guard bared his tooth again and said that in such a case, he should. The man with a big swing threw 2 teeth towards the girl, but this time, they looked very different. The girl lifted her head up and saw the way 2 cocoons appeared in the sky. Chrome frowned her eyebrows and said twice, the guy wouldn't be able to attack Justice's apprentice this way. With her power, she destroyed the entire attack. There was no trace of Stiletto. Joo's partner looked around and asked a question regarding where her opponent had gone. Suddenly, Chrome saw something in the sky. It was Stiletto, who jumped up to attack Chrome with his sharp fang that was on his arm. The girl began to summon her power again. She aimed her black twists directly at the young man who, at that moment, was still in the jump. But this time she wasn't helped by her superpower. Stiletto hit the girl in the chest with his knee. Chrome was thrown back and she fell to the floor. Wilhelm's guard decided to take advantage of this moment and ran to attack the girl. Justice's apprentice didn't want to give up at all, so she decided to try her strength again. She directed about 3 shadows at the young man's body. The opponent was not confused and in time to use his power. The entire attack landed on the man's bones. The servant in one fell swoop managed to get rid of those dark twists. Chrome said that just then, Stiletto forced her to start fighting him at full strength. Around the girl was a huge black storm that smoothly developed near her. Justice's apprentice pointed her finger at the boy and told him to try to block such a blow. It was not a simple attack. It was many times more powerful and had its own name, namely Shadow Tsunami. As Chrome's power approached the young man, he noticed the demonic appearance in the shadows themselves. The girl's power was so strong that as she hit the ground, pieces of asphalt cracked and shattered into small pieces. The surface was ruined all around, and there was murky smoke in the sky. Moments later, a black shoe appeared. Chrome turned around and noticed a male silhouette. It was her opponent. Stiletto used his power on his palm. The hand of his arm turned into a solid knuckle. Joo excitedly shouted his partner's name, but Chrome said with a serious face that she had it under control. The adversary said the girl was unlikely to recover after he stabbed her with it. Behind the guy, there was a huge black darkness. Chrome asked him about whether Stiletto should stop already and stop this kindergarten. Chrome said that from the beginning, Wilhelm's guard didn't even try to kill any of them. The girl asked Stiletto if she was right. Joo was shocked by his partner's words. Justice's apprentice took one moment as an example, namely, when at the very beginning, the young man decided to attack Chrome with his tooth. She turned her head slightly sideways to avoid the man's attack, but it wouldn't have been difficult for the enemy to deprive Chrome of breathing if he'd caught her by the hair. Chrome said they'd had enough fighting for today. The girl asked Stiletto for what he was really trying to accomplish. He said he'd taken absolutely every circumstance into account, and that case of killing Justice that was mentioned at the heroes' meeting was not at all unfortunate. Justice had indeed been killed. After saying that, Stiletto slipped his hand into his pocket. From his pants he pulled out a mini-disc and said that it contained footage of the guy turning into Justice. He added that he had a lot of difficulties with this material. Wilhelm's security guard said that if it came to light, Joo would be labeled a murderer. But the man, for some reason, had taken to breaking this evidence with his fingers. Joo couldn't believe that Stiletto had just taken the tapes and destroyed them. He was surprised that his adversary hadn't even tried to threaten them. Pieces from the mini-disc fell to the floor. Stiletto decided to crush them all the way down with his foot and heavy boot. He said that he also thought about the fact that he had no reason whatsoever to counter them. A kind smile appeared on his opponent's face. The man added that they had a lot of things in common, though you couldn't tell it from the looks of it. Chrome aggressively asked him about what he meant. Stiletto said that he used to be a member of Union 2, just like Justice's apprentice. Wilhelm's guard said with a smile on his face that for the moment, was a spy for Team El Condor. The boys were shocked by this story. The enemy continued to tell them that at the moment, Guardian and El Condor were severely outnumbered by Team Superhuman, and as soon as the villain epidemic faded into the background, then everyone began to care only about their own interests. So Stiletto is tasked with infiltrating the Union and causing confusion within the team, but he also needs allies to help him do his job. Joo furrowed his eyebrows and excitedly asked him what he meant. Wilhelm's guard said that the wannabe had the right idea. Stiletto added that the three of them would join the Union and have a day of judgment there. Chrome asked her opponent about how they are supposed to know about whether the data was only on that map. Justice's apprentice said that the guy could have easily made a copy. Stiletto answered her with a smile that it was up to the guys to believe his words or not. The servant pointed his finger at Joo and said he was pleased with the young man's skills. The adversary, thinking that a doppelganger would be able to use his power a lot of places. Stiletto said that he would not persuade the boys, as he still had unfinished work inside Union. The man added that if they did not want to make an alliance with him, they would become competitors for him. He was sure of this, that after that, the boys would lose to him without exception. Chrome tucked his head to the side and said in a dissatisfied voice that the man was incredibly confident. Wilhelm's guard immediately added that the guys could consider his offer as a recognition of their abilities. After saying that, Joo asked Stiletto if he really thought it was appropriate to talk about it now. The wannabe loudmouth shouted that he was really playing the part of Justice. Joo said with a serious face that they had to find the person responsible for the hero's death, and if the enemy made an alliance with them, it would mean that Stiletto had become their accomplice in the case. Copycat asked the man if he realized that. William's guard agreed and said that he might then get the chance, personally, to finish off the villain who killed Justice. Stiletto said that sounded pretty cool. The doppelganger realized that their opponent belonged to the El Condor team, which meant that the servant also hated villains. Joo said that for that reason, Wilhelm's guard could be a good accomplice. The guy with gray hair said the choice was theirs alone. Stiletto asked the boys if they would be with him or against him. The partners silently looked among themselves. Joo still gave the go-ahead, but first decided to ask his new sidekick what he planned to do next. The young man didn't answer anything. He only smiled sweetly at the guys. Upon entering the Union establishment, the security guard asked the guy about whether he was Lee JooWon. The man decided to carefully check the documents. He looked at the photo in the ID card and the guy himself, and after that he said that Joo seems to be a newcomer. The wannabe was let into the building itself without too many questions. The guy was happy that he passed the ID check so easily. Joo had taken a very long and careful time to forge the ID in order to get inside the new team. It was because of this that his arm was extremely tired. As the young man walked down the hallway, he realized the obvious thing. He said something that made him feel definitely different from the Guardians. The band members were all dressed the way they wanted to be dressed. The wannabe realized that, at their core, the union were only pursuing their own goals and had no definite dress code. Suddenly, the young man with the edge of his eye noticed an unknown silhouette that stood behind him. He turned, and in his eyes was visible surprise. It was his partner Chrome. She was dressed in rather homely and simple clothes. The girl asked the guy for why he was staring at her like that. The wannabe kept looking at the girl with surprise. He said that at this point he could speak for the fact that Chrome is quite beautiful. From such words, the girl became very shy and redness appeared on her cheeks. Chrome aggressively asked Ju to shut her mouth. She added that she didn't even want to hear about it. Her partner replied that just its student usually dressed in dull clothes, but now she looked very fresh. The partner added for the wannabe to pull down his teeth and follow her. Ju said frustratedly that now you can't even compliment her. The young man decided to take a picture with one of the union contestants. Ju told Justice's student for a girl named Yamnyam, also made her debut here as a hero. Chrome queried the name. The wannabe was very surprised from the fact that the partner had not heard of this girl. He said that Yamnyam is now a very popular mukbang streamer. Chrome replied that most of the heroes who join union do it for commercial purposes. She said that in the big scheme of things, Yamnyam only came here to get a good publicity. Behind the boys stood Stiletto. The man waved his hand and asked them if they had come. Justice's student said that actually, the elaborate plan wasn't so bad. After all, by raising one's popularity in union, one could realize the right to vote. Neither one's career nor one's abilities are important. It all depends on how much publicity oneself attracts. Ju asked Chrome about whether she would arouse suspicion because she was still a member of Team Guardian just yesterday. The young man questioned his new accomplice regarding how to gain popularity in union. Stiletto, with a smile on his face, replied briefly that he had one way. The corridors of the Union institution were empty, as all the boys were in the lecture rooms. The teacher, showing the pictures, told the children that, as they knew, abilities are based on manifestation, and depending on the manifestation, the same ability can be used in different ways. The man said that sometimes it happens that the manifestation goes differently than expected. He added that this usually happens when the ability is first awakened. The teacher said that in a large number of cases, it would cause the person to lose control, falling into frenzy. In this state, the person is almost completely devoid of reason and acquires a treating power, and his brain begins to function only on reflexes. The teacher said that people like this become hunting targets for the heroes from time to time. He said that if the guys were interested in such a hunt, they could get such training separately. Two guys started whispering. One of them asked about who should even be interested in this. The other guy jokingly said that it was a great idea for self-pilfering. The teacher was silent. In his mind he realized that it was quite expected and there would be no newcomers. It was obvious. After all, this was not Guardian or El Condor. The man decided to continue introducing his lecture. But suddenly, Ju raised his hand and asked the young man to stop. He excitedly said that their group wanted to participate. The teacher was very surprised by what one of his students said. The guys started to discourage their classmate. They asked the guy about whether his team was definitely up for it. Ju awkwardly laughed. Copycat asked Stiletto if they could participate. Since everyone else was negatively freaking out about it, their new sidekick agreed. Spyro said it would be quite difficult for a newcomer, but with Justice's strength, it would be no harder than spraining a child's wrist. Ju looked up at one of the buildings and wondered. Chrome led his partner to the place he had asked for. The wannabe was surprised at the sight of the room. Justice's apprentice said that the hero of the month always trained here. She added that Heist was also sometimes here and did her training. The girl questioned the copycat regarding why Ju had asked to bring him here. He replied that the difference was the strength. The partner couldn't understand him. The man said he was talking about defeating Kaiser since it worked itself out. Ju revealed that he wouldn't have been able to beat Graham if the fight hadn't been interrupted. Copycat said that Stiletto was completely right. The young man said that up until that point, all he had been thinking about was money. The man's hand began to gain strength again and emit a discharge. The skin was different in places and was a slightly different color. Lee JooWon remembered his 18 years and how happy he was to celebrate his little sister's birthday. Sona was very happy at her brother's congratulations and her green eyes were filled with happiness. She ran up to Ju for a hug and thanked the guy. The parents asked their daughter if she enjoyed it. Ju said with a smirk on her face that little sister was getting excited early. The little girl was excited. The brother held out his phone with a picture of a man on it and asked his sister if she remembered that she wanted to see the character of Absolu. She agreed and said that Absolu was very cool. The imitator told the girl to watch very carefully. The boy began his transformation, and his little sister waited patiently. Ju was one in one like the very same character by the alias Absolute. It was evident the happiness and delight Sonu felt at what he saw. His little brother said that he had practiced a bit for this moment. Sis happily said that Ju was the best bro. The parents were delighted with their children, but this fun didn't last long at all. In a single moment, the kids lost their parents to the villain. The boys turned back to see what was happening near them. The boy had a look of fright on his face and the little girl was holding her brother's hand and crying. The negative character thought that Ju was a real Absolute, and after that, the villain said that he had found a real hero. The young man did not expect this turn of events at all. He was very scared of the villain. Sonu hid behind her brother and said that she was very scared. Ju realized that he had to pull himself together or else Sonu would die. The man swung at the villain with his fist, but in just one fell swoop, the negative character was able to get rid of the young man. The guy fell to the pavement so hard that pieces of the surface shattered into small pieces. Ju couldn't even get up from the ground, and his body from head to toe was breaking from the pain he had received. He was losing his transformation, but even through the pain, quietly told his little sister to run away from here as soon as possible. Before the little girl could move from her spot, she was grabbed by the villain. Sonu, with tears in her eyes, called out to her little brother for help, but it was too late. The negative character mercilessly killed the girl. From all that the young man remembered earlier, his strength increased beyond recognition. Ju swung around and struck forward with all his strength. The walls began to crumble one by one, and the floor was left with the marks of the copycat's attack. Chrome was surprised by the boy's strength. The young man said he wanted to do things the way they should be done. It was a small room. The unknown man was sitting at a desk with monitors on all sides. He was writing something on a keyboard. The stranger found some information about Union, which he found amusing. Suddenly, the young man's phone rang. This call was coming from the Republic of Korea, which was made in the late night. The man immediately and confidently picked up the phone. The call told him about the guys in Union. He replied that he had already seen the news and asked his partner a question regarding whether they were coming here. The unidentified individual rose from his chair and moved forward. The young man's feet emanated slime and dirt and his fingernails were black in color. He said that the approaching event was quite interesting, as the man was just as bored. The stranger went to the elevator, and the ringing on the phone still as it went on. The young man went to the bunker and cranked the door to go inside. The lock shattered into pieces and suddenly opened. The man had a rather caustic smile on his face. The stranger stepped inside. He kept talking on the phone, holding it in his hands. On the call, the young man spoke of the time that had come. Down in the basement there was a pack of monsters and fiends that were acting very aggressive. These monsters had sharp teeth and red eyes. The man looked at them and said that his boys were just as hungry. It was an inanimate, small town, and most of the buildings had a dirty patina. The team that had not long ago showed up was going to this particular abandoned neighborhood. Chrome asked the wannabe about whether he had overdone it too much yesterday. Stiletto knitted into their dialogue. The man asked a question regarding whether they could handle this not easy case. The new ally with a smile said that they have nothing to fear, since they have Chrome and Justice. Thanks to Chrome, the guys didn't even get a hero mentor, and that's really saying a lot. The girl said that the group should consist of 4 people. She asked Stiletto about who would be another partner. Justice's student hoped that the young man would not take some slacker. Just as suddenly, someone patted Ju's back. It was a popular streamer named Yamnyum. She greeted the guy standing next to her. The wannabe didn't expect to see Yamnyum here at all. The girl asked him if they were the same age. The streamer girl suggested that the guys start getting along with each other. Chrome was very angry at her former acquaintance. She asked Stiletto what he was even thinking when he decided to bring a streamer here. The man replied that he had already talked about how popularity was important at Union. Wilhelmsgard added that it was convenient to have someone like Yamnyum to speak for their team, and especially since they had to hide their identities. Yamnyum asked fearfully about what hiding identities meant. Ju couldn't understand how their partner was so open about it, since the guys in their case could easily be exposed. Yamnyum thought about the fact that there was a streamer among them too. She shouted happily that she now understood what the matter was. Her partner said that she too from the beginning felt awkward in public and it was normal. The wannabe exhaled a sigh of relief as they almost got caught. Stiletto said that the area of the place was pretty big and suggested the guys split up. Ju said he'd be with Chrome, but his new ally disagreed. Stiletto said that his partner would be with Yamnyum. He was surprised by this news, as he had always been paired with Chrome. Afterward, the wannabe spy asked the spy if he was up to something. Stiletto questioned Ju regarding whether he remembered what the professor had said about the manifestation. Wilhelmsgard added that his partner hadn't felt it yet and the difference in abilities before and after the manifestation was simply not comparable. He said that Yamnyam would help him with that. Ju interjected. Stiletto questioned the boy about whether it would be easier for him to learn from Yamnyam than from Chrome. The wannabe didn't understand at all how he could learn anything from his new partner. Stiletto said that if they still had him under suspicion, Chrome could watch him personally and that was fine. Justice's apprentice agreed with her new ally's opinion. She said that's what the guys will do. The wannabe didn't expect that answer at all. The servant says that if anything happens to the guys, they should contact them right away. The new pair of partners didn't expect things to happen so quickly at all. They accepted it and silently went on their way. Ju thought about the fact that he was walking around here with a popular girl and who knows what could happen to him. The wannabe looked at Yamnyam's body and thought that she was much cuter in person than in the video. But after a moment, Ju realized that he was staring at her too indiscreetly and the girl was probably uncomfortable. He also remembered that he hadn't heard anywhere what ability his new partner had. And after a while, Yamnyam approached him. She asked him what the word observe meant. Ju realized that it was said too bluntly. The guy replied that it was because Stiletto had just recently become a member of their group and therefore, it was meant to monitor progress. Yamnyam said with a smile on her face that it all made sense now. The guy was surprised at the girl believing it so easily. The wannabe decided to ask his new partner about what her ability was. She pointed her finger at herself and asked the guy again. The girl replied that her superpower is that she can eat as much as she wants and from that, Yamnyam only gets stronger. Ju realized what his partner had told him was a load of crap. The young man asked her why she became a hero. She replied that she wanted to eat a lot here and become more popular. Ju stopped the girl and asked another question about how her ability originated in the first place. Yamnyam replied that she didn't know that. She was eating a candy bar and asked him about whether abilities needed any reason at all. The wannabe remembered the spy's words in which he said that the girl would help him properly awaken his power. Ju said that Stiletto was a loon and decided to just make fun of the guy. The streamer suggested that the guy just try to think about what he wanted to do. She added that it didn't necessarily have to be something big. A thought flashed through Ju's mind at the girl's words. He thought that there must be some reason why this naive and sweet girl was using her abilities better than the guy. Yamnyam looked out from behind the wall and told the young man to wait and not to hurry forward. The boys looked out into the distance, already the two of them. Not far away from them, a huge and greenish head could be seen. It was a massive and tall villain. His body was relief and athletic. He stood with his back to the guys. Ju looked at the guy's target and said that the enemy hadn't noticed them yet. The young man added that they should be quiet to begin with. But suddenly, Yamnyam came out from behind the wall and started eating her bars loudly. The wannabe didn't understand why the fuck she was so loud. He wondered if his partner had any brains at all. After that, Ju grabbed the girl's hands and told her to stop eating her candy bars right now. Yamnyam asked him why. Their conversation caught the monster's attention. He roared and turned towards the guys. The villain ran sharply and quickly in their direction. It was obvious the negative attitude he had towards the heroes. Yamnyam was not confused and decided to use her power. The streamer girl started to get into her power. She said she could kick the ass of anyone who hurt her. Ju looked at her fearfully. The girl bounced off the asphalt so hard that pieces of concrete flew around. Her super ability was so powerful that with just one kick of her foot, the villain flew off to the side. The giant's face twisted, and he loudly began to lurch. This negative character from the powerful blow from the streamer girl was lying on the pavement. That girl's body was glowing with pink flames and emitting white smoke. Ju remembered his new partner's words, in which she said that she could eat as much as she wanted and would get even stronger from it. When Yamnyam started using her superpower, her body started burning calories. The wannabe streamer checked to see if the streamer really had that ability and she wasn't lying. Yamnyam said with a smile on her face that as expected, the sport had refreshed the girl. Ju was surprised that her partner called it a sport. The girl's physique was in great athletic shape. The man already had a hunch that her partner would be able to defeat the villain. The monster was not at all on a joke. In his eyes was seen hatred and anger. He ran up to Yamnya and kicked her right in the stomach. Ju excitedly yelled out his new partner's name. The young man wanted to ask her if she was okay, but was silent for a moment. The girl instantly struck a pose. She was expending more and more of her power. Yamnyam said that she had burned about 300 calories. She added that she urgently needed another candy bar because she needed to eat it right away. A pink flame appeared in the girl's hand, which she created with her power. The streamer girl attacked the hungry monster right in the stomach. This blow was quite strong and the villain was thrown far away. The giant groaned from the unbearable pain that the girl made her. The villain concluded that he needed to run away from this place as soon as possible. Yamnyam was angry that their opponent just ran away like that. Joo couldn't believe that the monster was still intact after such a strong attack. The new partner decided to catch up with the negative character. She said she would go after him and Joo should contact the team. The young man agreed. After the streamer ran away, the wannabe was left alone. He stood silently and unmoving in place, looking into the distance. He said he felt as if something incredible had happened. Joo reached into his pants pocket to pull out his mobile device. An obscure and murky consistency crept toward the guy from behind his back. It snatched the phone out of the guy's hands. Joo couldn't understand what was going on here. The unknown liquid began to take the shape of a silhouette. The ideologic man wondered to himself what the hell was going on here. It was the same stranger who kept the villains in his basement. He asked Joo a question regarding if he was going to bond with his new comrades. The man had a caustic and crazy smile on his face. The stranger said that the guy would have no way of informing his team. He made sure that Joo's phone started to melt from his touch. The wannabe wasn't prepared for anyone else in the area. He figured the stranger was kind of savvy and that meant that the man was a different type already. Joo decided that either way, he needed to contact Chrome and Stiletto first. He started running towards this crazy man in order to get his phone. The guy yanked the stranger with his hand in order to give him his phone. But suddenly, Joo dipped into that unknown consistency that was all over the place. He looked down at his hands and asked him what the slurry was. The young wannabe's eyes almost popped out. A lump of solid sludge came up behind Joo and stabbed into his stomach. His sharp object. The villain with a crazed grin on his face said he warned Joo that he wouldn't make it. The wannabe looked fearfully at his opponent. This monster stuck something that looked like a knife into the young man's body. Joo didn't expect this turn of events at all. His teeth gritted against the sharp pain. The wannabe punched from the stranger's fist. A cut was left on his sweatshirt. It was because of that crazy man's attack. Joo fearfully asked himself about what had just happened. He said that the feeling of the punch was very strange. The stranger, correcting his jaw, questioned the doppelganger regarding why he immediately started with his fists. There was a distance between the guys. The opponent sighed heavily. The stranger had strange emotions on his face. He asked Joo about where the pretty girl who was next to him had gone. The man added that it wasn't interesting at all without her. The wannabe holding onto his torso asked the madman about his relationship with the fugitive who appeared here. The stranger snidely replied that who knows. After that, the adversary asked Joo about whether that girl was helping him with his manifestation. The adversary told him about how not everyone is able to withstand such a villain that was in their way. The man added that at this time, he was only a little bit helping these negative characters. He had a crazy smile on his face that reached his ears. This stranger seemed like a psychotic person. Then Joo said that all these villains became just like that, only because of this strange guy's pranks. The wannabe prepared to attack and said that the stranger would answer for all the deeds he had done. The enemy's smile grew to the heavens. He hesitated and tilted his head downward. The stranger swooped down on the young man with words to just try and get back at him. Joo punched the madman in the arms and the dirt that came from the man got on his hand. The entire hand of the wannabe's arm was dipped in a layer of the dragging consistency. The guy continued to stare at his palm. He thoughtfully and paused to ask himself if it was mud. The unknown man took a very deep breath. He was preparing for another attack. From his opponent's mouth, large clumps of this sludge began to fly out. The copycat managed to dodge sideways from the new attack from the man. Joo began to lurch, touching his arm. He tried to get the sludge off, but he couldn't get it off at all. The slimy mixture didn't want to leave his hand at all. The stranger smilingly said that there was no way the guy could get it off his body. He added that as soon as his mud sticks, it immediately becomes stronger than a medical tire. The enemy prepared to attack again. His cheeks and throat were bloated with mud and his face looked very nasty. He said that maybe it's the sludge and not as strong. The man added that it didn't make any sense now. He started attacking the wannabe with his dark chunks of mud. Joo didn't manage to dodge any of the stranger's blows. The guy was swallowed upside down into the sticky and dragging substance. It was getting harder and harder for the young man to stand steady on his feet. The copycat said that it was getting harder to move. He added that at this rate, he would collect all the blows of his opponent. Joo decided that he needed to shorten his distance. The guy started running towards the crazy stranger. The opponent was surprised at the hero Haruhiro coming at him. He said that Joo was approaching in order to outsmart him. On the unknown villain's face, an extremely large and suspicious smile appeared. The stranger jokingly asked the guy about whether it was hard for him to run with so much mud. Joo didn't answer anything, and only swung around to make his kick towards the man. The copycat touched the young man's chest, his opponent rather surprised. The guy yelled loudly about the fact that he had managed to hit. Just as suddenly, Joo's hand went through his opponent's body. He was very much surprised by what had just happened. The crazy man with tears in his eyes and a sick smile to his ears said that he was in pain from the hit of the skit. There was no way Joo's arm could have gotten out of the man's body. The wannabe noticed the way his opponent's hand was approaching his face. Into the young lad flew the stranger's powerful and strong fist. Joo's cheek was dented from the attack. The stranger preparing for the next blow said that he wasn't as squishy as the wannabe might have thought. His opponent attacked him in the same part of his jaw. Joo's eyes sparkled. They were filled with intense power. He told the opponent to try his punch. The young lad's hand glowed. It was from the extremely powerful force. The opponent smiled very suspiciously. He set his fiend up to Joo. This creature was strong and tall and his eyes glittered with anger. The stranger only stood behind him and smiled at the whole picture. The wannabe was surprised at seeing another bogeyman. The guy had already mentally prepared himself before launching his attacks, but he was overtaken by the villain, who with a single swing, was able to toss Joo aside. From such a strong blow, the young man was thrown to the asphalt, far away. Joo struggled to get up after the attack. The young man looked at the monster and wondered if the monster had been human before. The stranger said the son of a bitch gave him a good charge. The wannabe shouted loudly and angrily, "Shit." The opponent said it was a real bore. He added that there were plenty of people like that in the stranger's memory and this guy wasn't unique at all. Joo excitedly interjected, "Door?" The crazy guy, with a smile on his face, agreed with the wannabe, and behind him was another huge but blue monster. The new union member was very much startled by what he saw in front of him. In front of him, there were two villains behind and two in front, and in the middle was the stranger himself. Joo said that this man had a pretty strong super ability. Only after some time, the wannabe realized that in front of him was not a couple of giants, but a whole bunch, which recently appeared near him. The stranger said that he would then go to that beauty. He added that he would have more fun with her. Joo shouted loudly for the unknown man to stop now, but the antagonist said to let the villains deal with the stupid guy themselves. Around the villain's neck, there was something like a collar that was adjusted by the man. It electrocuted the negative character. Absolutely every monster was wearing this strange sensor. After the impact, a discharge ran through their bodies and they immediately grunted from the intense pain. The young man didn't understand at all what was happening to them. On the one hand, a dark-looking villain pounced on Joo. It was obvious how evil the giant was. The wannabe started running away from his opponents. The shaggy-haired man with green hair made a huge arm swing to hit the guy from a height. Joo managed to dodge the attack in time. The villain, with incredible force, hit the pavement. The new member of the union team said that there were far more monsters than he could have imagined. He was startled to remember that Yamnyam wasn't even aware of it yet. There were two more villains approaching the young man, and one was bluish in color. He swung his fist at Joo, and the other opponent was dark brown in color, like some piece of dirt. The wannabe got into a stance to avoid the blow from the blue-colored opponent. But suddenly, from behind him, Joo received a blow from the second bogeyman. All four villains began their attack on the young man. The doppelganger curled up so that the blows of the opponents did not seem so strong to him. The blue monster swung his huge and heavy fist at the boy for a punch. Joo put up his hand to stop the attack from the negative character. The opponent could not understand what had just happened. The copycat quietly said, "Finally." The chunks of dirt that had been on him and weighing him down all this time began to fall off the young man. The wannabe said with a smile that after all this time, was able to feel true freedom. He thanked the villain for helping him, and after that, Joo took a swing at the negative character with the words that he needed to run to Yamnya as soon as possible. The blow from the hero's side was so strong that the villain's face swam. Joo attacked him so hard that the enemy flew off to the side. The wannabe character shouted hatefully to get the hell out of here. This neighborhood was fairly quiet and harmless, but as it turned out, things weren't so easy here. The young man was still fighting with four opponents. He was striking one by one. From behind the guy appeared a giant. He began to growl and came closer and closer to the wannabe from behind. Joo noticed the monster's intentions and hit him with his fist, right in the face. From such a strong attack, the villain fell backwards. Suddenly, another monster was about to pounce on Joo, but from the top, The young man spotted it in time and followed back. The wannabe was very angry from the whole situation. He gathered his thoughts and his fist spewed a strong and electric charge. The guy pushed himself off the surface quickly and sharply. Using his foot, Ju was able to hit his opponent directly in the face. The new member of Team Union, with the help of the blue monster's body, was able to push off to deliver the next blow. By doing so, the doppelganger attacked two negative characters at once, one of them with his leg, and the other he slammed his face into the pavement. The dark monster kicked the young man in the stomach, causing him to grunt. Ju sat down to calm down and think it over. He looked at each of these monsters and realized that there were too many of them and he wouldn't be able to dodge each of them. At that moment, the green-haired giant stuck out his tongue towards the wannabe. Ju managed to sidestep it. He said, "It was an incredibly nasty stick. It was most likely a distraction." And when the man's attention was focused on the tongue, one of the villains aimed his fist at him for an attack. The blow was not weak at all, as the doppelganger did not expect such a turn at all. He took the attack completely on himself. He fell to the asphalt so hard that the surface beneath him was completely shattered. Ju said that he was trying to hold back, for he realized that he was fighting people like himself. The young man said that if he continued like this, it would never end at this rate. The blue monster began to approach the lad. It opened its healthy maw and spoke loudly about being hungry, while Ju struggled with the four. Then Yam Yam easily felled. "That's strange, green monster." The girl smilingly said that she had done a good job today. She felt sorry for the fact that she wasn't broadcasting live at this moment. Yam Yam thought that it was probably for the best, since she was a newcomer and her new friends didn't want to show their true faces yet. The new member of the team looked forward in surprise. She asked herself why no one from her group had come yet. It seemed to her that the guys were just a little late. Suddenly, that crazy man said that Yam Yam had done a pretty good job. She didn't realize who it was. The man started to come closer to her. He said that the lady single-handedly handled such a monster and it's incredible. Yam Yam briefly asked a question regarding who the young man was. The stranger said he was also a newbie hero. The unknown man added that the girl had done all the work for them and they were the ones who had to destroy this villain. Yam Yam replied with a smile on her face that it was small things to her. The streamer girl asked the guy about if he saw a guy with black hair when he was walking here. The man replied with a smile that the guy had yelled to him that he had something to say to his new team and then ran away. Her partner asked him if it was true. The stranger looked fearfully at his negative character. He said that he didn't expect at all that this guy would lose. The man added that he overestimated him too much. The crazy guy turned his eye sideways and wanted to think of another version of this event. The man decided that it was just a silly and naive-faced girl. As suddenly, Yam Yam approached him. She asked him about who the stranger belonged to. The guy interrogated the girl. She said that if we go by the suspicious man's clothes, he's neither a guardian nor a superhuman. The streamer added that the man is in no hurry to kill the villains, so she's taking out the El Condor team as well. The stranger said with a smile that he was from Team Union. He asked the lady if she remembered him. Yam Yam briefly replied that she didn't. She said she remembers literally everyone from her team. The girl added that memorizing people is one of the main qualities of a streamer. Yam Yam said that on orientation day, she heard that all of Union's newcomers were getting together, but the girl didn't see him among those newcomers. She turned around and said that it was rather strange. The smile from the man's face was gone. The stranger said there was nothing to be done now. The madman said that the girl's face was out. That's why he wanted to have some fun with her. He added that since she had such a curious ability, the man should add the girl to his collection. As suddenly, Yam Yam turned sharply. She used her power to swing the stranger's hand away. The man was shocked, and there was a solid hole in his hand. Yam Yam asked him about whether he didn't know about touching without permission, akin to a bad act by an equally bad fan. The young man was surprised and turned back around. His hand quickly and deftly flew as far as 3 versts away. The new Union teammate said the man was kind of suspicious. She also added that she was only going to digest the bars and rest. The girl's body was just blazing pink flames. She said she would probably have to lose a little more weight, while Yam Yam was trying to deal with the stranger. Then the blue monster started growling at Ju. The wannabe took his fist and slammed it into his opponent's face with all his might. The giant was twisted from such an attack, but not far from Ju. Another fiend was sneaking around. The monster grabbed the doppelganger's body. The hero said loudly that this villain was a complete bastard. After that, the negative character threw the guy aside with great speed. Ju was able to slow down during the attack. All 4 giants were very angry and ran towards the guy while making strange noises. The wannabe started hitting them with words to make the monsters come to their senses. Ju added that they were being used as a mudslinger. A huge giant with green hair took a swing at the hero. He managed to step aside and avoid a strong blow from his opponent. The monster with sharp teeth and red eyes screamed that he was hungry. Ju realized that the fiends only moved with reflexes, and that meant they were already zombies IRL. As suddenly, the young man was grabbed by the hands of one of the monsters, so that the imitator on could get out. And from the front, another opponent was approaching the doppelganger. On the face of Ju appeared a wry smile. The guy said that if you compare all the facts, then, in front of him now are not people. The monster that wanted to attack the young man was suddenly surprised. The copycat decided to use all his power to the fullest. From him came a huge and powerful aura. The opponent stood in shock, for he had not expected such a turn of events. Ju said that he wanted to try something new. He added that it was sacrilege to try something new on this fool. The young man said that he had done well, and then the copycat added that now he would fight them for real. Ju stood in the middle of the circle, while all the other villains surrounded the guy on the perimeter. At this moment, the young man was just burning with excessive energy. One of the opponents roared and ran towards the wannabe. The young man stretched his arm forward, thus easily being able to stop the negative character's attack. After that moment, the villain shouted very loudly. The wannabe's eyes glittered with power. The guy said that the monster was very strong, just as he thought. Ju's fingers digging deeper and deeper into his opponent's skin. The doppelganger said he wasn't going to lose to the monster in strength. The enemy began to grunt at the sharp and intense pain Ju was inflicting on him. The villain staggered back and roared. The wannabe threw his foe aside with just one swing of his arm. As the giant flew from the guy's strong attack, he dragged another villain after him. The 2 negative characters landed right into the stone wall, thus destroying it. Ju said that his training was worth it. The young man took one more look at the lying monster and fell silent. Ju remembered the time when he had asked Chrome for whether a madman could become human again. The wannabe had talked about how the villain had been human from the beginning anyway. He asked his partner about whether there was nothing at all that could be done about it. Justice's apprentice turned sideways and replied briefly that they were just monsters now. Stiletto knitted into their conversation, saying that there was no known case of a madman being able to become human again. The man added that it was a monster and should be destroyed. After that, the spy added that these monsters were no different from real villains. Wilhelmsgard with a smile on his face told Ju to kill them without hesitation, as the opponents would not give in to him like Stiletto did that day. Ju turned his back to the monsters and said that not only had they become like this unwillingly, but they had unwittingly become someone else's puppets. The young man's eyes were bright blue in color, and a powerful energy emanated from the guy himself. Ju said that he would finish with the monsters as soon as possible. At this moment, Yamnyam was still the same, still figuring things out with this crazy man. The streamer asked the man about whether he had seen JooWon. The girl immediately asked a second question regarding whether the stranger had harmed Yamnyam's partner. The madman replied that he had no idea. He added with a smile on his face that perhaps her ally was already being digested by some monsters. The man pointed his finger at the girl and said that she was not like Ju, for her ability was amazing, adding that it would be great if Yamnyam went with him. The stranger with a smirk says that if the girl volunteers to cooperate, he will make sure that she doesn't have to see and experience any cruelty. Yamnyam said with a disgruntled face that this is definitely a ban. She was upset that there is no such button in real life. She aggressively said that if there really was such a button, she wouldn't have to listen to all this nonsense the man was telling her. The stranger started slinging mud again and his emotions looked crazy. The man said that he liked bullying the girl much better. After these words, he turned into a kind of smoke and floated in the air above the streamer. Without thinking long, Yamnyam decided to start using her power to attack the strange stranger. This fiend began to swirl around the girl. She looked at the substance and wondered if it was dirt. The stranger with a smirk on his face asked the streamer girl how she felt about this turn of events. That sticky and heavy mud began to envelope the girl's body from head to toe. The man questioned Yamnyam regarding whether she now thought his words were nonsense. The union team member squatted down and said that she now understood exactly what the matter was. The streamer pushed herself off the pavement and flew straight up into the sky. The girl adding that she kept thinking about the situation like that. The man was preparing for another attack. He told Yamnyam that if she decided to increase her distance substance, it wouldn't be enough to defeat him. A new batch of dirt clods flew at the girl, which the crazy man spat out at her. The Union team member agreed with the stranger's words. She opened a new candy bar and decided to eat it so that she would have more strength for the next attack. She finished the remaining piece of the sweet treat, and after that, Yam Yam created a huge and pink flame above her head, which she made with a powerful force. The streamer girl directed this huge attack directly at the strange stranger. The man was surprised at the action on the girl's part. Everything around shone with such a bright pink color that nothing could be seen in the distance. The crazy man, moving to the side, said that it was very unexpected. He added that this firepower came at him even from afar. The stranger thought about the fact that such energy must consume a lot of power. The man concluded that such an ability Yam Yam would not be able to use in this battle forever. The streamer girl continued to eat the bars one by one in order not to lose all of her ability before this fight was over. The girl was using ball strikes and trying to hit the stranger clearly. The man was not satisfied with the fact that the heroine was eating her bars without stopping. He said that Yam Yam should finish it faster because he was getting tired of it. The strange stranger put his head down and thought about how else he could attack this naive girl. A huge wall of dirt appeared in front of the streamer. The Union student thought about the stranger wanting to attack her head-on. She wondered what this strange type was up to in her direction. She shouted that he wouldn't succeed. Yam Yam raised his hand to use the attack, when suddenly, her attention was caught by something on the floor at her feet. The entire perimeter where the girl was standing was filled with solid mud, and her feet were completely engulfed in the sludge. On the madman's face, a suspicious and dirty smile appeared. After the man had done what he had planned, he began to manifest his mud storm towards the girl. Clumps of this substance began to swirl around Yam Yam, thus swallowing the girl's body to itself. The Teen Union students said that the mud was very sticky and it was getting harder and harder for her to move. Yam Yam decided what she needed to get rid of this substance as soon as possible. She prepared her palm with pink flame to strike her opponent. But suddenly, the man made the streamer's hand to be absorbed into the dirt. He did it on purpose so that the girl couldn't attack him. Through all this dark and sticky slime, the silhouette of a stranger could be seen, who was smiling suspiciously at Yam Yam. The Union disciple tried to break free and throw at least a few punches at the stranger, but she couldn't do it at all. This storm of mud very quickly swirled and twisted in different directions, thus swallowing Yam Yam's entire body into this substance. The man hesitated. He stopped attacking and decided to get closer to the girl. The streamer girl was sitting upside down, stained in sticky mud, and only one of her eyes could function normally. The villain smilingly approached and said that his ability was something like a trap, for he splatters mud as he fights. The crazy man looked at Yam Yam and said that she looked pretty cute in that slop. The man reached out his hand to the streamer with the words that this funny look made him want to take the girl to his house. Suddenly, at this stranger, someone started to approach. It was Joo. He ran up and with all his might, hit the villain with his fist in the face. He did not expect such an event, so he did not have time to dodge. The stranger fell straight to the pavement with his back. The copycat angrily exhaled and told the madman not to dare touch his comrade. It was evident the way the doppelganger was very negative against the man. Joo called him a son of a bitch. The villain didn't expect to see this young man here again. The adversary said he should have run away from here earlier. The madman spread his arms sideways and asked the copycat what he had come here again for if he had already lost this battle. The doppelganger's fist began to spew out more and more powerful force. Joo revealed that while he was on his way here, he was going through hundreds of options in his head on how to make real sashimi out of the stranger. From sheer excitement, Hurry was pacing from side to side around the room. She was thinking about Joo, since he had warned her about infiltrating Union, but he still hadn't told her how he was doing on his new team. The atrium employee stood in misunderstanding against the wall. The heroine, noticing this, she moved closer to the man and asked him what happened here. The employer replied that Haste wouldn't be able to practice here today. The man told her that most likely this room had been previously used by Mr. Justice since everything inside was broken. The heroine immediately went to see what this room looked like at the moment. The employee called out her name, Mrs. Justice was very annoyed by Joo's behavior. She angrily asked herself what the copycat could have done to the training room. When the girl entered the room, she noticed that all the walls were broken and there was a huge depression in the floor from the impact. Hurry began to look around. She questioned Joo regarding what he could have been up to in this training room. The young wannabe's eyes were filled with strong power, and from the man himself came a purposeful aura. The stranger interjected Joo's words about the sashimi. He said that it was ridiculous. The man smilingly said that when someone gives good advice they should be thanked and taken seriously. The madman added that Ju's powers against him were useless. You could see on the wannabe's face how he wanted and longed to fight his opponent again. The hero replied that if he didn't try he wouldn't learn anything. His hand was already ready before he attacked the villain. The stranger resigned himself to the young man's desire and took a deep breath to strike. From his opponent's mouth, large clods of dirt began to fly out. He said that Ju could try to match him one more time. The copycat bent down to the floor and picked up a piece of asphalt with his hand. With that, Ju was able to avoid more blows from his opponent. All the substance flying around, the stranger's face was in his own filth. He said with a smirk on his face that what the guy had done was much better than if he had just run away. The madman once again turned into a solid cloud of his liquid to head for the young man. It was a wriggle of filth, going straight into the man's chest. The villain asked Ju how he would be able to block such an attack. A huge amount of substance was around the copycat. The strange type started laughing loudly. The doppelganger was mired in this sticky and heavy mud. His torso was extremely tightly coiled in this slurry. The stranger, with a snide smile, once again asked Ju about whether he still wanted to make sashimi out of him as he had said earlier. After that, the villain asked the wannabe about how he was going to do all this. Standing in the sticky mud, Ju looked at his hands and thought. The madman said that he didn't notice any difference or effect between before and after. At that moment, the young man clenched his fist harder and harder. Ju swung his arms sharply and strongly in order to utilize the power and get out of this viscous substance. Everything around him glowed and was in blue color again. The enemy didn't realize what just happened. The villain covered his face with his hand. He looked curiously at what the young man was doing. The wannabe said he didn't care whether the stranger was different from the previous negative characters or not. Ju added that the villain would still get what he deserved. Not far away from the boys were various non-working stores. From Ju hitting the enemy with great force, those buildings shook and collapsed. The villain flew into the distance and grunted in pain. The filthy stranger lay on the pavement and couldn't even get up from it. Copycat decided that this was the best moment to attack. He walked up to the villain and pointed his fist in his direction. The stranger decided what he needed to strike again. He started spitting out dirt right into the guy's face. The doppelganger placed a block of his hands in front of him to ensure that as little of the substance as possible got on his body. After that, Ju reached out his hand and shook off the dirt with a huge swipe. The crazy man was shocked that the attack didn't stick to his body, but immediately scattered. He also couldn't understand how Ju had gotten out of that slurry in the first place. It seemed to him that he had already told the guy that. The wannabe swung his fist at his opponent again. The villain concluded that the hero was only a little bit stronger than him. He added that in any case, he would not be affected by Ju's blows. After the young man swung and made his blow, then the body of the negative character broke into small pieces. The stranger couldn't believe what had just happened. He loudly questioned himself. The guy's attack was so strong that the entire front asphalt cracked into fine crumbs. Part of the body of the strange stranger decomposed on the top layer of earth. The man, with great difficulty, began to pull himself back together. He wondered for what kind of power this hero possessed, as suddenly, an attack from Ju flew into the stranger's face again. Every part of the villain's body was scattered all over the area. The copycat asked the stranger about whether he would regenerate forever. A smile appeared on Ju's face, saying that he was about to see who would win who. The villain looked around and aggressively said that a large amount of his filth had gone to waste. He added that if it continues like this, his power will completely run out. The strange type squinted his eyes and said that he needed to hurry in order to finish off the guy once and for all. He decided to use his powerful force and summoned a mud storm. The villain told Ju to try and scatter it. The guy stood in the middle and watched what was happening. He started getting sucked into the storm. The wannabe guy covered himself with his hands and said there's a lot of mud. The villain's attack got bigger and bigger. The young man stood in the same spot but did nothing. The adversary said caustically that he did not understand how one could believe so strongly in himself to so audaciously suffocate in this slop. The storm swirled around the young man's body so much that he couldn't even be seen in it. Ju took a deep breath and exhaled. He was overcome by an extremely strong motivation. He raised his arm to make a powerful strike and get out of this trap. The young man angrily made an attack with his fist into the floor, and because of this blow, the asphalt was mangled into a fine crack. The storm immediately began to fly in different directions, thus casting off the man's body. A very large circle appeared in the radius where Ju was, showing the aftermath of the blow itself. The copycat stood with his back to his opponent as he lay on the ground. The villain could not believe that this hero was a novice, for he was able to scatter the mudstorm with the wind. The enemy saw the man approaching him again. He said that he should leave the place as soon as possible. A caustic smile appeared on the doppelganger's face. He asked the villain where he was going to go, calling him a bastard. The negative character looked at the young man with consternation and fell silent. After a while, the villain started laughing very loudly. The stranger, gathering himself together, said that he didn't mind that he lost in this battle, and he also added that there was no way he could handle Joo. He, with a smile on his face, questioned the wannabe regarding what Joo would do now and whether he would do it again. Without meaning to spread his dirt, Joo thought for a moment, at which point the opponent said that the guy wouldn't even be 100 years old enough to be done with all of this. After that, joy appeared on the man's face. He asked the negative character if he really thought so. The man remembered that the power he was getting with his transformation into justice, he was still not able to use 100%. The young man leaned his shoe on the pavement so that a kind of smoke started to billow around him. Joo realized that he still couldn't control that kind of power, but he remembered that he was capable of taking it for an instant. Once, a martial arts master had told him about how he didn't need to drive himself to exhaustion all the time. The teacher had added that it would be much more important if he concentrated in the instant he really needed it. The copycat's hand began to glow a blue color. Joo said to the mudstorm exploding. The villain had not at all expected exactly this turn of events. He looked at the young man in surprise. Joo decided that he needed to show his magnum power. He punched his opponent in the face with his fist. The body of the negative character shattered into such small pieces that from a distance no one would have noticed it. Only one eye of the villain, looking around with fear. All around was smoke and bits of asphalt. Joo continued to stand. The hero told his opponent with a satisfied smile that he thought that such an action would be enough with his head. This was the other side of the same neighborhood. It was just as quiet and without a single soul on the street. Stiletto walked ahead, and Justice's apprentice, catching up with her partner from behind. The man turned to the girl and with a smile on his face told her to listen. He asked his partner if she was being too vigilant. Chrome replied that she had no good reason to trust him right now. The girl questioned the spy as to why he had infiltrated Union if his purpose was to kill the villains. She also asked the lad what was the need to do so. The young man was surprised and quietly said, "Aha." Stiletto said without a second thought that he believed what the girl was right, but they had not yet reached the point in their relationship where the man could tell all about it. Chrome turned her head to the side and sighed indifferently. Just as suddenly, Justice's apprentice shouted sharply for her partner to stop now. The girl had spotted something in a large building that was not too far away from the guys. Justice's apprentice pointed her finger at a room that wasn't too far from the guys. The young man looked in the direction his partner pointed and asked her what was wrong with it. Chrome replied that it was the only one with a light on right now. Through a very small slit, one could see what looked like some dim lighting was burning inside the window. Stiletto was surprised that she noticed such a small detail. He said they could go and check it out. When the boys arrived at the door, they were in for a surprise. There was a chain on the door that blocked the entrance to the room. The spy decided to use his power and turned his hand into a hard bone. When he swung it at the lock, he easily managed to destroy the metal barrier. The doors opened and the boys, without a second thought, walked into the room itself, where the lights were on. Chrome started looking around, hoping to find something unusual and interesting among the tables and cluttered shelves of books. The girl replied that the room looked quite normal. She added that most likely they just forgot to turn off the lights. Her partner, looking in the other corner of the room, said that no one could know that for sure. Stiletto thought of a trick. He decided to turn off the lights all over the room, but to the surprise of the guys, the lamps were still on and the lighting around them was still on. Then the spy said that they had not forgotten to turn off the lights. He added that there was a separate generator in the room. The girl asked him a question regarding whether the device was in the office. Chrome looked around and said that the whole situation seemed very suspicious to her. What caught the girl's eye was an iron door that had a small window at the top and had screws all over it. The other side was gloomy and empty, and that window didn't even display the girl's silhouette. As suddenly, there was a very loud banging at the door. It was so strong that some pieces of the door flew apart. It was Chrome. She used her power to completely kick that metal door. Everything around was in a little smoke. As soon as the girl entered the room itself, she stood in a stupor. She didn't understand what was going on here. Her partner came up behind her, looked inside and wondered. In the enclosed room was something that looked like a laboratory. Stiletto asked her partner for if this was what the guy was thinking about now. In large capsules with liquid inside stood different types of monsters. All silhouettes were different from each other. They had different builds and heads. Not far from the containers, there was a table. It was covered in blood and had metal handcuffs, and not far from it, there were sharp objects lying around. Chrome looked at all the objects with horror. She was so shocked that she didn't utter a single word. After a while, Apprentice Ju questioned the spy about whether this was an experiment room. The guy said that it looked like it was. Not far from them, there was already another table, and on it lay all sorts of papers. Stiletto took one of the papers and read that it was inhuman torture. He went on to say that this laboratory was used for biological experiments, and just as his student replied that no one could even think of such a thing. At that moment, the girl's attention was drawn to a computer desk that stood not far from her. She walked closer and with a serious face said that power was connected to this monitor. An icon popped up on the screen. It asked for a password in order to log in. Chrome said she wasn't at all surprised that there was a password on the computer. She said she would need to take all the bodies from the lab to the atrium. The young man pulled his partner aside and started typing something into a line. The girl was shocked at this sudden turn of events. After the spy pressed something on the keyboard, then he was able to successfully log into the device's system. Just as his student aggressively asked his partner how he knew the password to this computer, Stiletto said that there were 53 test subjects in total and most of them were long dead. The spy went on to say that each test subject was from a group of incompetent people with undisclosed potential. He added that the scale of the experiments was far worse than he would have thought. Just as suddenly, Chrome decided to use her power and channel it into the table where Stiletto was standing. Her partner aggressively said that she asked a question and didn't hear an answer. She once again questioned him for how he knew the password to the system. At this point, Ju used his power to shatter his opponent's body into very small particles. His punch was so strong that one eye was left of the negative character. Ju's hands were very massive and resilient. He squeezed his palm and quietly sighed. The entire perimeter was broken and shattered, and hollows and cracks appeared right beside the asphalt. The wannabe closed his eyes and said that he had probably overdone the impact a little too much. As suddenly, Ju abruptly remembered Yamnyam, who was enveloped in layers of mud. He hoped to goodness she hadn't drowned in it. The young man looked in the direction where the streamer lay and saw the fact that she was lying quietly in a pile of mud. Then he realized that she was fine. The doppelganger realized that there were several freaks and that this case was clearly taking an annoying turn. Ju was about to leave, but suddenly, an object that was lying on the pavement not far from the guy caught his eye. He walked closer and picked it up. It turned out to be a walkie-talkie that the mud guy had left behind. As suddenly the tech asked Hidoro what that sound was just now in his background. The wannabe realized that the strange stranger had an accomplice and the one that Ju had recently struck was named Hidoro. The young man began to take on the guise of a villain. He radioed in that he was here and needed to deal with the minor characters quickly. The accomplice replied that he did too. Hidoro's ally told him that a group of 2 men had gone inside the lab and he had filled all the buildings with explosives. These words scared the hell out of the hero. Ju realized that the 2 people the man was talking about were Chrome and Stiletto. The wannabe began to talk about how this situation complicates things a bit. The villain's accomplice was silent. The strange stranger's partner called out loudly that it wasn't Hidoro talking to him now at all. He disconnected himself from the dialogue, and the young man tried to shout and stop Hidoro's accomplice. The hero came to the conclusion that there were as many Hidoro-like frames here as there were several. Ju clutched the walkie-talkie in his hand and said angrily that his partners were now in complete danger. Chrome continued to stand aggressively beside her partner, keeping her shadows near her. Justice's apprentice said with hatred in her eyes that if Stiletto didn't explain himself now, he would be in very big trouble. Just as suddenly, the spy noticed something behind his partner's back. Without thinking, the young man decided to use his power and turn part of his arm into bone. Stiletto covered the girl with his body and put a block to prevent her from getting hurt. Chrome couldn't understand what just happened. She asked the spy for what he just did. The guy replied that there was most likely someone else here besides them. The young man's arm began to lose its ability and his bones began to crumble. He looked at his hand and realized what his bones had completely broken. He wondered what that had just been. A stranger's hand appeared in his field of vision. It had black smoke and green twists. As this stranger touched the wall, more and more cracks began to appear on the wall. The guys looked around and realized that everything began to crumble and after a while, began to collapse. The ceiling of this laboratory could not withstand such stress and began to fall down in small pieces. Chrome looked up and wondered if they were going to completely destroy the building. The young man looked at the ceiling and realized that the huge stones were already too close to them. Without thinking, Stiletto pushed his partner a little to the side so that she wouldn't get hurt. The spy used his power to make some kind of shield out of his bones. He jumped into the feeding stones for the reason to keep the computer system safe and find interesting information. The girl was shocked at the deed his partner had done. Huge pieces of the building completely swamped the perimeter where Stiletto was. But suddenly, under one of the rocks, a pool of blood that belonged to the young man came out. Chrome loudly and confusedly shouted the man's name. At that moment, some foot stepped forward. The stranger said, now realizing the way things really were. The stranger from the shadows said that for a long time he couldn't realize what kind of girl was in front of him, and after a while it finally came to him that it was Chrome. He looked to the side and added that he had heard that the girl was definitely referred from Union's team. Justice's apprentice interjected the words that just now this stranger had said to her. Chrome decided to reassure herself and let her black meander all around the perimeter of the building where the man was. She reached out to the villain and with hatred in her eyes, asked him a question as to whether he would let the girl hear it too, for she was very interested. The young man's leg began to glow with black smoke and strange green lines. With a single kick from this stranger, all the shadows that Chrome had enveloped near him scattered in different directions. Justice's pupils aggressively asked the man what the point of this was. The negative character replied that this place was a scaffold for the girl. Chrome continued to look at her opponent with disdain, but said nothing to him. It was early and sunny in the morning. The girl took out an envelope of money and started counting it. The whole incident happened about 10 years ago, and the stranger in the background was Kim Soyoung alias Chrome. She was carefully counting her money. She picked up a book and put a thick envelope with her finances in it. Seo Young, with a smile on her face, put the book back on the shelf, saying that everything was fine. At that moment, suddenly another woman walked into the room. She called the girl by name. Chrome turned around startled and asked her what was wrong. It was Kim Soyoung's mother. Her name was Ju Mayan. She leaned against the door and asked her daughter a question regarding if she was going to school. The daughter noticed that her mother had a black eye and a hematoma under her eye. She ran up to Mayan and excitedly asked her what had happened to her. Her mother smiled at her through all her pain. She said she felt fine. Chrome asked her about her father raising his hand on her again. As suddenly, the smile from Mayan's face was gone. She put her head down and said she was sorry. Kim Soyoung looked at her battered mom but couldn't say anything to her. It was a hard moment for both of them. The girl took her yellow backpack in her hand to go out to school already. She didn't understand what her mom needed to apologize to her for. Chrome walked out of the house and her mom stood in front of the door, looking at her silently. The whole time while Soyoung walked to school, she thought about what happened this morning. The girl called her mom the kindest thing ever. It was already getting dark outside and the time was getting closer to evening. The principal asked Seo Young about whether she had thought it over for sure. The man said that with her grades, she could easily get into a prestigious university. The girl replied with a smile on her face that she was going to go to work right after graduation. Chrome was walking home alone after a hard day. Suddenly from behind, the girl was hugged by her friend. She told her about Soyoung being in first place in the school's ranking and added that she saw the way she was in the teacher's lounge. Her friend asked her about since when she became a favorite with the teachers. Soyoung replied that ever since she started school, the girls were actively going home. A friend of the future heroine, fixing her shirt, said that the heat outside was unbearable, adding that she was looking forward to the vacation. Seo Young asked her what she usually does on vacation. Her friend said that her dad always drags them to their campsites. She added that it annoys her. Chrome said with a smile on her face that their family just spends time at home. The comrade replied that he envies her and would also like to vacation like that with his family. The girl ran over to the other side of the road and waved her hand saying that the friends could see each other tomorrow. Soyeon quickly ran to an institution where she worked. She apologized for her tardiness. The bosses said that it was no big deal and asked the girl as soon as possible to change into her uniform and get to work. The heroine worked tirelessly. She shouted loudly that she could replace the coals herself. Chrome realized that everything was fine and she just needed to get rid of the man in their house. The young man handed the girl an envelope with money and said that she had done a very good job today. Soyeon tilted her head and thanked the man. On the way home, the girl counted all the money she had earned that day. She shouted happily that after all this time, she had managed to raise the right amount of money. There was a spark of hope in her eyes. She said that if she added up the money she had in her book, they could rent a room for nothing. The girl added that then their life with her mother would finally get better and they would be happier together than they had been before. After a while, Chrome walked into the room and called out that she was home. She looked in the distance and saw that things were scattered and her father was very angry and standing in the very passage. Soyeon walked a little forward and asked her father about what happened here. The man coldly said that her worthless mom today decided to run away from this house. The young man added that Mayan was wasting all her time on useless shit. He wondered where the girl's mother even got the money for her escape from. The girl, after saying that, immediately ran to her room and had one sentence in her head. The man turned toward his daughter and said her name with aggression. The teenager started leafing through the book he was putting the stash in. Soyeon realized that all the money she had been saving for a room was not there. She had not heard her father call her aggressively several times. The girl remembered how Mayang had told her that she was sorry, and then it came to Soyeon's mind that it was her mother who had taken her finances. Suddenly, the teenager was kicked by her father, so hard that she fell to the floor. Soyeon lay motionless in the corner of the rooms. Her father started calling his own daughter a whore and a goddamn bitch. The man was furious that already his own daughter dared to ignore him. He started hitting the girl with all his might, asking her a question regarding whether they were conspiring against him. The father asking Soyeon where her mother was now. Chrome curled up and began to think about when she would be able to get out of this hell. She had spoken many times for how much she wanted to escape from this house. Soyeon's eyes shrank and also turned a bright purple color. She repeated again that she wanted to escape as soon as possible. Her father saw those dark twists and was surprised so much that his eyes almost came out. The young man was thrown back from such horror that he had just seen. Chrome sat up and stared intently at her hands. The girl couldn't believe that it was her doing this power. Soyeon couldn't understand why it had started now. This teenager's hair began to change to a soft purple color, and her nail plate took on a pure black color. She remembered her father, who had already crawled closer to the start of the door, and lay in fear. Chrome looked with crazed eyes at the man who all this time had been beating her own mother and the girl herself. She said she had had enough of this torment. The girl pointed her black and long twists right into her father's body. He screamed that he didn't understand what these things were that were coming towards him. The daughter pointed her finger at her own father with hatred and said that it was this man who made her life a hot hell. The man asked a question to Soyeon, which was about what these things were around him. He asked the teenager to remove it all as soon as possible. With each passing moment, the girl's eyes became more and more distraught. She only wished for one thing, for the man who had been bringing her pain all along to finally disappear from her life forever. Shadows began to envelope her father's muscular body, and as time went on, the twists began to take their toll. The man began to scream loudly from the pain his own daughter was bringing him. Through the screams and pain, the thick blood of Kim Soyeon's father was spilling out. The villain said that he was aware of the fact that before that Chrome was quite popular in Team Guardian. He added that the girl is the first assistant of justice whose abilities he was able to recognize personally. After what he said, the man questioned Chrome regarding whether she let herself be caught by Kizaru on purpose. He asked her with a serious face about what she was up to. Justice's student furrowed her brows and squinted her eyes. She aggressively said that only she would be asking the questions here. The heroine held her hand out beside herself to launch an attack towards the man. Huge black twists headed to the other end of the room. The young man looked at all that was going on around him. He said nothing but sighed heavily. The villain touched one of the walls with his hand. This wall immediately began to collapse. The man stood motionless and on his face there was no emotion. Pieces of stones easily covered the body of the enemy from the incoming blow of Chrome. The heroine frowned her eyebrows and looked away. She realized that the man's ability was based on destruction with a single touch. The girl began to take a turn in her power again. Dark and long lines floated near her body. Soyeon said that she didn't care about any of this at all and could easily do without direct contact. The attack that Chrome launched didn't travel far from the enemy's body, but the man's hands were able to stop it all quickly. One of the girl's twists caught the villain's eye. He extended his finger towards the shadow and with just one touch, was able to burn the girl's strike. The man stepped a foot forward, thus forming a shadow. Chrome noticed this and looked excitedly at all that was now happening on the floor. Her hand began to blacken, and in places were visible green strange waves. The girl realized that the enemy is using the shadow for his attack. The left side of the girl's body completely began to take on a dark color, and clothes began to disappear. From the intense heat, Chrome screamed from the intense pain pain that the man was inflicting on her. From such pain, Soyoung crouched on the floor. The opponent said that she probably could not have even foreseen such a situation and such a sudden turn of events. Chrome's face began to darken more and more. She thought that this young man was not as simple as she had thought from the beginning. The stranger walked a little closer to the heroine and held out his large palm. Right next to her face, he said quietly and confidently, "Well." He placed his thumbs of his hands on Soyoung's head. The girl looked at the man with disdain and through pain. Silently. All this went on for what seemed like an eternity. The villain stood and slowly tried to end this girl, once and for all. At this point appeared Ju. The hero pounced on the enemy with a huge arm swing, thus, was able to push the villain from his partner, who was lying on the floor, already completely without strength. The man did not expect such a turn of events. After the blow, he stood up and covered himself with his hands, and his body gave out some steam. The villain, holding his hand near his face, quietly and with disdain in his eyes, said, "Ho-oh." Ju, with an extremely strong aggressive, said for the young man not to even lay a finger on Chrome. His gaze was filled with madness and his body was emitting a strong discharge. After a while, on the perimeter, a copycat appeared. He with great aggression attacked the enemy and with a huge arm swing, hit him in the chest. With the help of this blow, Ju was able to push the villain from his partner, who was lying on the floor, already completely without strength. This villain was able to catch his balance in time and stop on the ground. He did not expect such a turn of events. After the blow, he stood up and covered himself with his hands, and his body gave out some steam. The opponent looked at this young man who had arrived so unexpectedly in this building. The villain brought his hand to his mouth and coughed a little. In the eyes of the imitator was visible aggression and hatred for the man, and the hero's body itself emitted a large number of different kinds of discharge. He told the villain not to touch his partner with a finger. Ju stood quite close to Chrome lying on the floor, and a little farther away from the guys. Was the enemy himself? At this moment, the hero decided to look at his hand, which was striking his opponent in the chest. The fist was black and burnt color, as well as on the skin there were green twists. He did not understand what happened to his hand after the blow. It seemed to him that his fist was falling apart. The villain said that Ju is most likely new to Union. He added that the obvious facts are right under the hero's nose, but he can't even match them. The enemy says that Chrome was hurt for the same reason. The stranger began to say that it was only because of his own resistance, and before he could even finish, Ju's fist was coming at him again. This attack was so strong that his opponent was thrown far away. The man covered his face with his hand and looked at the hero with large, surprised eyes, for he could not understand what had just happened to him. The aggression with which the copycat was striking the stranger's body was evident, and Ju swung his fist at the villain again. The hero's blows came one after another and he did not think of stopping and pitying his opponent. Ju swung his fist at the stranger to hit him in the stomach. The guys stopped their fight for a while. The new member of the Union team made his final punch, and the stranger crouched down a bit, standing against the wall. Suddenly, the villain pressed his palm against the wall. It spewed a very dark and negative aura. After the touch of the man making contact with the wall, the room began to rapidly collapse and crack at the sides. Ju asked what was going on here. The entire room was in a kind of dust from the considerable collapse. Ju covered his mouth with his hand, for he began to cough very badly from the dirt and dust. He continued to look at his opponent with disdain. Through the smoke, the hero didn't even notice the man's hand reaching for his head. Spewing black smoke from his hands, the stranger appeared out of the smoke and with a full swing, strode in with an attack on the hero's shoulder. The wannabe had no time to react to this attack, and so his shoulder was also badly wounded. He grunted in sharp and intense pain. He noticed the huge arm of the enemy coming right at his neck. The villain, with great force, threw the guy far away in order to avenge all the blows he had thrown towards the stranger. The stranger touched the floor with his hand. Absolutely everything in the room started to shake and collapse. The hero was surprised by the whole situation, as suddenly, the opponent with a great acceleration hit Ju straight in the stomach. The wannabe began to cough from such a strong attack. He angrily called the villain a bastard and added that this stranger was very smart and strong. Ju looked at his opponent again and thought that he was definitely stronger than the sketches he'd taken a beating from earlier. His shirt was completely off, and the hero decided to attack his opponent again. The young man swung his fist to strike the stranger, but he managed to dodge. The villain stood in a pose and with contempt and hatred in his eyes, looked at the guy, who very diligently and confidently tried to attack him. Ju swung at his opponent again. He was well aware that in this case, he had only two options to get out of the whole situation. The copycat should have emphasized either attack or defense. The opponent again dodged the attack from the hero's side. The hero was already looking at the stranger with anger, who was very cleverly dodging his every strike. Ju's body, shrouded in black with green inserts, twisted, and the negative character with a serious face stood behind the young man. The doppelganger was covered in burns from his opponent's blows and dark smoke was coming out of his hands. Ju said that in that case, he had no other choice. His eyes turned pure white and his hand was once again preparing for another strike. The hero remembered the concentrated strike, which is when you hit just as hard as you can, otherwise known as open attack, where the emphasis was only on the strength of the blow. Ju's fist was burning with blue flames, and his eyes were spewing out a powerful discharge of energy. He approached his opponent and with his magnum power, struck him directly in the stomach. The man didn't expect such a strong punch from the newcomer, so it was a very strong surprise for him. The villain looked at his sleeve, on which a mark was left after the attack. He was quite surprised by the power this hero possesses. The copycat started to attack his opponent again, but this time, the man had time to react. He became very curious about what this guy was hiding. Ju swung for an attack, but did not hit the body of the negative character at all, for he moved aside. The villain looked to the side and laughed snidely at what the young man had just done. Suddenly, the adversary connected the radio link and asked Hidoro about whether the guy had finished collecting the samples they had talked about earlier. The accomplice replied that he had done everything as the man had asked. In Hidoro's hand, there were 2 metal discs. Ju shouted angrily that if that was what the villain really wanted, he should go to him. After these words, the enemy hit the asphalt quite hard with his foot. Where Ju and his partner were standing there was a huge and dark hole, into which the guys began to fall. The hero could not imagine such a turn of events. The hero started calling his partner's name loudly. The negative character looked down on the situation. He saw the copycat falling into that black hole and did nothing about it. You could see the indifference on his face and how he didn't care about those guys. Ju realized that the enemy wouldn't help them, so he clenched his teeth and said, "Shit," quietly. He pulled his hand towards Chrome and begged her to wake up, but she was falling down and didn't react to his words. The hero shouted the name of Justice's apprentice over and over again. He tried with all his might and words to reach the girl for her to wake up, but Soyeon was in her past memories. She was reliving that moment from her teenage years when she had directed her dark twists at her father for the reason of getting revenge on him for all his bad deeds. The girl's attack began to sharply penetrate the man's skin, thus making him very painful. Myung's husband yelled loudly. Chrome couldn't stop, and with each blow she made her own father hurt more and more. She remembered every offense and act he had done towards them for a long time. The man pleaded for his daughter to stop doing it. She moved closer to her father and quietly said, "Daddy." And after that, a caustic smile appeared on Soyeon's face and she said that she wouldn't stop hurting him. The girl went crazy. She shouted loudly and aggressively that it was all because of him and Chrome's life became like this, only because of her own father. The man was upside down in wounds and bruises. He said that it was not like that at all. The father began to apologize to his daughter for all the words he had said to her earlier. From those words, the girl's face creased. She questioned him regarding whether his apology ended there. Soyeon angrily shouted that trash like her father should die, and as soon as possible. She once again aimed her attack at the man. But suddenly, the strike stopped on some unknown silhouette. It was Justice, the #1 hero in the entire city. The girl did not expect to see this man in front of her at all. She stammered out the hero's name. Justice said that he understood Soyeon's condition and how upset she was, but he said that it was wrong to wish someone dead anyway. The character added that he came here to resolve the whole situation. As suddenly, Chrome loudly yelled for Justice to shut up right now. She asked the positive character a question regarding whether he even understood what he was talking about now. The girl asked the hero to leave her alone as soon as possible. Justice turned his back and said that in the case of the girl's father, death is mercy. The hero said not to let Soyeon let her father get off so easily. The man was covered in blood and listened to their conversation in horror. As suddenly, the savior took the girl's dark twist and didn't want to let her go. He suggested that Chrome, instead of completely giving into his anger, follow him in order for him to teach the girl how to channel her powers in the right direction. Soyeon's eyes shrank considerably. She was quite shocked by the suggestion from Justice. As suddenly, Chrome began to wake up a little at a time. She looked very exhausted. There was a man beside her. He shouted the girl's name loudly. through the blur in her eyes. The girl realized that Justice himself was in front of her. She called the hero by name, but it was not that hero at all. Ju looked at his partner with fright and excitement. It was then that Soyeon realized that Lee JooWon had inherited Justice's power. The girl started to close her eyes. The wannabe shouted to her partner to keep her eyes open, but it was too late. Justice's apprentice called herself a fool in her thoughts, and afterward, lay motionless in the young man's arms. Ju shouted his partner's name, hoping she would wake up right away. But despite all the requests and shouts, the girl did not react in any way and continued to lie lifelessly on the cold floor. The copycat was very annoyed with what was happening now. He angrily shouted, "Damn," as suddenly, the young man remembered that there was also a second partner along with Chrome. Ju looked around and asked himself about where Stiletto was now. The hero asked himself a question regarding why he hadn't noticed their new accomplice. Ju was sure that the spy couldn't just leave Chrome alone and escape from this room. At that moment, the young man saw a hand sticking out from under a pile of rocks. From the black glove, the wannabe guessed that it was Stiletto who was there. The hero fearfully shouted the spy's name. The doppelganger immediately climbed the mountain of junk and shouted loudly for the new member of the group not to move as Ju would help him get out. The hero questioned Stiletto as to whether he could hear what his partner was telling him. The spy's hand lay still as lifeless as Chrome's body. The hero said that the building had completely collapsed and if he was covered in debris, Stiletto was most likely already dead. After accepting the whole situation, Ju shouted again very loudly, "Shit." The hero looked at the body of his partner, who finally didn't wake up. He asked himself what the hell was happening to him. He remembered his entire family, who had been killed by ruthless monsters on the day his little sister Sonu was born. The young man was overcome with sadness. He said that everyone the guy knew ended up like that. Ju covered his face with his hand, sat on his knees and asked himself why things were like this. As suddenly, his sadness was suddenly interrupted by someone's voice. It was the words of Stiletto. He with a smile on his face thanked the copycat for all the sad words, but added that's still not dead. Ju loudly pronounced the name of the spy. The hero with a very big and sincere smile replied that he never thought that their new accomplice could be killed so easily. Ju said that he would soon pull Stiletto out from under the rocks. But suddenly, the young man's face changed very abruptly to a different emotion. Stiletto himself crawled out from under the jams, and his body was wrapped in a large number of bones that were able to save him from death. The spy asked the hero a question regarding whether he was alright. Ju replied that he could not understand what sort of things were underneath Stiletto's bottom. Through the blood in pain, the Union team's new sidekick replied that he had saved something very important and valuable for them. After a while, all three boys were taken to the hospital. The young man was looking for some room when suddenly, a nurse came out of one office and was a little surprised. She asked Ju about who he was going to go to. The hero cheerfully gave the name of his partner. Then the woman asked him about what the girl was sick. Ju replied that he was Kim Soyeon's guardian and had come here to visit her. The nurse said with a smile on her face that she understood now. She added that the patient had just woken up and still needed rest. The man asked in surprise if she was awake. The man thanked the woman sincerely. She asked him to wait for a minute, but he immediately rushed to the girl's room. Another nurse asked her partner who it was, and the woman said she doubted very much that it was her lover. She embarrassingly added that she thought it was a guy they were just getting to know. The partner blushed and said that the hero looked very attractive. Ju walked sharply into the room and shouted loudly, "Chrome!" On a hospital bed sat a girl who was covered in bandages in many places. The young man fell to the bedside and folded his arms together and said, "Chromo is very glad." Chrome asked his partner about why he was making sniffles. She added that it looked very disgusting to her. Ju replied that the girl almost said goodbye to her life. The hero smiled awkwardly and said that he was very happy that she was okay. The partner blushed at these words and asked the young man not to exaggerate. The wannabe asked a question regarding how Chrome was feeling. She replied that she was fine. The student started coughing up blood, and after that said that maybe a few internal wounds could be found. Ju excitedly said that he wasn't sure if the girl was okay. The hero told Chrome to try to take it easy as she needed rest for the moment. The girl looked at Ju's bandaged arm. She remembered the moment when she had seen Justice himself through the blur, but it was just her partner named Ju. She asked the copycat a question about how long he would call her Chrome. She said her full name and asked him to call her Soyeon because she was uncomfortable with him calling her Chrome in front of other people.